Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Waste power. I can get stronger just by breathing. Chapter 41. When Sugu, Ma Mingji, and Zuo Tiantian all sat on the seats of the suspension car, Jia Sanli, who was sitting in the driver's seat, said, "I'll take you with me first to see what the school is like." As he spoke, he started the hover car, and then the hover car began to climb along the city from bottom to top. The high-speed climb of the aircraft not only causes a pushing sensation on the back, but also brings strong altitude sickness. Fortunately, the three people sitting in the back row were all warriors. Although Zuo Tiantian and Ma Mingji felt a little uncomfortable, they were still within the tolerable range. Sugu, on the other hand, calmly looked out the window at the two landmark buildings in the city and the 2,000-story towers that reached straight into the sky, slightly lost in thought. When the hover car was side by side with Bai Yun, Xie Sanli stopped climbing and the car stopped in midair by him. He turned his head, looked at the three people sitting in the back seat and said, "We are going to school soon. You guys need to guess the location of the school first." Then, in order to arouse the interest of the three people, he said, "If you guess correctly, there will be a prize." As soon as he heard that there was a prize, Ma Mingji immediately became excited and pointed at several locations, but Jia Sanli shook his head every time. Zuo Tiantian hesitated for a long time, and finally chose a large open space where manned warships could be launched. Jia Sanli looked at it and still smiled and shook his head, "It's still wrong." At this time, Sugu's eyes, which had been looking out the window, condensed slightly. He found that the layout and structure of the entire city was quite similar to the yin-yang diagram circulated in ancient Xia dynasty. The 2,000-story tall buildings that were landmarks in the city he just looked at had a fish-eye-like feeling of yin and yang. Could it be? A bold idea came out, and Sugu blurted out, "Are all the dark sides of Tai Chi diagram in the entire city the Starry Sky Martial Arts University?" Jia Sanli looked at Su Jiyu in surprise. This was the first time that a student had immediately guessed the size and location of the school. He nodded and said, "Yes, half of Tianjing City belongs to the teaching area of Xingkong Martial Arts University. However, the other half of the city's land, legally speaking, still belongs to Xingkong Wuhan University. However, in order to facilitate the federal government's entry and assistance in management, Xingkong Wuhan University leased the other half of the land to the local government at a relatively low rent. There are some interesting historical facts here from hundreds of years ago. I won't go into them today. If you are interested, some students can check them out in the school history museum." After hearing this, the boss of Ma Mingji and Zuo Tiantian opened his eyes and said in disbelief, "This, half of the city is the Starry Sky Martial Arts University. There is still half of the city land that the school leases to the local government. How deep is this?" Even Sugu's eyes narrowed slightly, with a look of disbelief flashing in his eyes. At this moment, he also felt the terrifying undertones contained in this oldest martial arts university. This isn't a university, it's simply a college city. These are prepared rewards. Xie Sanli took out 2 checks with his signature from his arms and handed them to Zuo Tiantian and Ma Mingji respectively. Most of the new students are already at the peak of their self-cultivation realm before entering school. They only need one more skill to reach the state of self-cultivation. With this, you can exchange it with your school teacher for a transitional skill, similar to Tian Yuan Gong. Or you can sell it directly, exchange it for credits, and save it to buy a real major skill. Zuo Tiantian happily took the signed piece of paper, her face full of excitement. This piece of paper could actually be exchanged for credits. You know, in top martial arts universities, the value of credits is much higher than money outside. Because you can use credits to buy martial arts items here that are impossible to buy outside. She glanced at Sugu gratefully. She didn't expect that by following him, she would miss such an opportunity. At this moment, she felt that her love heart, which had been suppressed by high school studies for 3 years, began to beat loudly next to this extremely outstanding peer. When Ma Mingji took the piece of paper, Jia Sanli looked at Su Jiyu and said, "Sugu, you have entered the Seeking Me realm and you also have the transition technique. Do you want me to directly help you exchange that portion for credits?" Hearing this sentence, Zuo Tiantian's eyes widened and looked at Sugu with eyes full of disbelief. Although she had seen videos of Sugu killing enemies across levels before, until this moment, she truly understood the gap between herself and him. I am still in the realm of self-cultivation, and I hope to enter the next great realm with the support of my martial arts university teachers after I go to college. And Sugu has successfully broken through on his own. She had always been regarded as the proud daughter of heaven, but she felt ashamed in front of Sugu. Sugu pondered for a moment and then said, "Teacher Xie, can you exchange this reward for me to study for a day in the school's martial arts place? The place where martial arts is passed on, where martial arts forces generally store their collections of martial arts combat skills books, is where the true heritage of the forces lies. This is especially true for Starry Sky Martial Arts University, which is said to have a profound foundation and has been established since the Dark Ages." After hearing Sugu's request, Jia Sanli was silent for a moment and then said, "Actually, entering the martial arts place to study was one of the conditions for specially recruiting you. However, it was not officially open to the outside world until the official start of school. I can let you go there to practice in advance, but are you sure you want to use this opportunity to just learn combat skills in advance?" Sugu nodded without any hesitation and said, "Certainly. Su Jiyu has been practicing so far, and most of the combat skills he has obtained were obtained in the comprehensive high school of Hangzhou No. 1 middle school. They are all cheap mainland goods. But it is different here. Whether it is rare, or high-level combat skills, the number of reserves in the Starry Sky Martial Arts University must be extremely large. Here, he will definitely be reborn in martial arts. In the matter of martial arts, Su Jiyu will never let himself delay satisfaction." "Okay." Seeing this, Jia Sanli immediately nodded in agreement. He looked at the excited expression on Sugu's face and sighed slightly in his heart. What a good child. While having combat power beyond his peers, he is still so motivated. This is a natural warrior. How can such a person go to the command department, a gathering place for garbage? It is simply letting the beautiful jade be covered in dust. Su Jiyu, you must choose your own, real main practice method as soon as possible. When most students enter the realm of seeking me, there will be a freshman competition according to the practice of previous years." Jia Sanli instructed. Su Jiyu nodded after hearing this, but he didn't care too much. He was still thinking about the fighting skills at the moment. Seeing this, Jia Sanli looked at the 1,000-story building in the school not far away and smiled and said softly, "Don't think that you can get the skills you want by entering the martial arts land. How many fighting skills you can learn depends on your own ability." After traveling around the school, Jia Sanli began to send the 3 people in the car to various locations in the school. First, he went to the teaching area of Shinkong Martial Arts University and put Zuo Tiantian down. This girl in the floating car didn't know what stimulated her. She didn't even go back to the dormitory and immediately went to exchange the skills to break through the realm. After completing the freshman registration, Su Jiyu and Ma Mingji were sent to the boys' dormitory area. Xie Sanli looked through the rearview mirror and watched Su Jiyu get off the car. He thought to himself, although Su Jiyu is a rare genius, those who can be admitted to Starry Sky Martial Arts University are all the pride of the city. There are also top scorers from other provinces who perform as well as Su Jiyu. The freshman competition in a month will definitely make Su Jiyu understand how wrong it is to join the command department. It is simply delaying his future. Then I will take him to the transfer procedure. Thinking of this, Xie Sanli felt much better. When the hover car behind him left, Su Jiyu looked at the dormitory where he lived with surprise on his face. In his 2 lives, this was the first time he saw a school use a 3-story single-family villa as a dormitory for ordinary students. He walked in and looked at the notice board on the door. Every day, there will be a fixed cleaning robot to help clean up. You can directly order martial arts nutrition meals in the dormitory, and there will be a takeaway guy to deliver them directly. And the basement of the villa is still a personal training ground for students. It's simply heaven, Su Jiyu said with emotion. Brother Su, are you going to the martial arts land to learn combat skills next? Ma Mingji looked at Su Jiyu and said. Su Jiyu smiled, shook his head and said, I haven't fought with anyone for a long time, I'm itching to fight. Let's go to the virtual spirit world together later. Su Ji-yu took out the X device with several sponge boards from his suitcase while he was talking. Su Ji-yu hasn't fought with anyone these days, and he has been holding it in for a long time. Seeing this, Ma Mingji hurriedly said, "Wait a minute, brother, wait a minute, I have something to discuss with you about this. It's a big business related to you in the virtual spirit world." After listening to Ma Mingji's words, Su Ji-yu looked at him with a puzzled face. He knew 9 things out of 10, nothing about doing business. Your Ma Mingji family has been in business for generations, and your father is the richest man in Hangzhou. Why should you discuss any business with me? Ma Mingji rubbed his hands with a smile, then turned on his phone and sent a link to Sugu. "Brother, look at this. I stayed up late these days to make this website." Sugu opened the link and looked at the homepage of the website where the link was imported. He was stunned for a moment. The name of the website is written in golden artistic characters, and it has a very exaggerated name, Martial God's Home. The subtitle next to the main title describes the purpose of the website. The first communication home for Almighty God of War fans. Scroll down the website and see that there is only one video uploaded on this website, which is the complete video of the battle where Sugu first landed in the virtual spirit world and defeated the coquettish assassin. "What are you doing?" Sugu looked at this thing and was confused. Ma Mingji put his arm around Sugu's shoulders and said, "Brother Su, after you finished fighting the coquettish assassin, I went to check out the money-making model of the anchors in the martial arts dojo. I found that those anchors can monetize traffic as long as their abilities are passable and they specialize in an unpopular weapon as a gimmick. What is traffic? That's money. Do you know that in the last battle, you randomly selected weapons and random battlefields, and then easily defeated your opponent in seconds? How awesome was your opponent, attracting more traffic and fans? I haven't done any promotion on this website, and more than 40 people have registered. If you can maintain a winning streak in the future and become famous in the virtual spiritual world, the more fans will join the Martial God's House. Soon we will just by building a website and making money, our 4-year college expenses will be completely solved." Hearing this, Sugu felt a little moved again. But when he heard the word traffic, he immediately recalled some traffic stars in his previous life. When those people go out and take a plane, there will be a bunch of people holding long guns and short cannons to take pictures. Sugu got goosebumps all over when he thought about how he might have more and more fans if he was exposed. He waved desperately to Ma Mingji and said, forget it. You should find other ways to make money." Ma Mingji seemed to have expected that Su Ji-yu would say this. He still smiled and said seductively, "Brother Su, I guess you don't know yet. Generally speaking, martial arts universities highly encourage students to make a name for themselves in the virtual spiritual world. Because this matter can help the school further promote it, it is the most effective advertisement. Therefore, your record, number of fans, and reputation in the spiritual world martial arts dojo can be directly converted into credits. At Star Martial Arts University, credits can be purchased directly here, and there are new martial arts weapons that are completely unimaginable outside the campus. Brother Su, don't you want the underground training room of your dormitory to be filled with the latest martial arts weapons from the military?" After hearing this, Sugu's eyes widened with confusion on his face. 2 images emerged in his mind, one of which showed him being chased and taking pictures when he went out. From then on, his right to privacy was difficult to protect. Another one is the underground training room of the dormitory, where his beloved martial arts weapons are piled up. After a while, Sugu gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, then it's up to you to handle this matter. But let's make it clear first that I will never take the initiative to reveal my ID or identity in the real world. Unless I can't hide it anymore and someone else recognizes it, I won't be able to identify it." This was a compromise method that he came up with after struggling for a long time. After hearing this, Ma Mingji immediately smiled and said, "It's okay, Brother Su, your words are enough. Brother, I'm not reliable in other things, but I've never cheated you on making money." After getting the tacit answer from Sugu, he was in a good mood. As for the condition he issued that Ma Mingji should not take the initiative to reveal his identity, he didn't care at all. In his opinion, how could Sugu not be exposed? Even warriors with the same martial arts profession and the same abilities learn the same techniques. The fighting style presented in the end will definitely be different. It's like this person's fingerprint, there must be something special and different. It is also for this reason that many people in the brave stage and martial arts dojos use their real names, because their special fighting style is so easy to recognize that using ID is completely useless. After reaching the elite level, no one will use ID. As the opponent's Sugu matches become stronger and stronger in the future, he will be studied more and more by his opponents. One day everyone will know that Sugu is the all-powerful god of martial arts. And that time is when the traffic is monetized. When that day comes, you will definitely be able to harvest a lot of traffic and credits. I'm such a business genius. While Ma Mingji was thinking about his business, Sugu had already finished wearing the X device. Seeing this, Ma Mingji hurriedly said, wait for me, Brother Su. I'm not ready yet. I want to go in as soon as possible. I want to video the second battle of the Almighty Martial God and put it on our website. Quote, the Almighty Martial God has landed in the virtual spiritual world. When Sugu logged into his ID in the virtual spirit world, at the same time, a middle-aged man saw the notification sound on his mobile phone, and then he suddenly jumped up from the sofa. Is it finally here? He is the owner of the ID Coquettish Assassin. Since he was defeated by Sugu last time, he has been paying attention to the movements of Almighty Martial God. But since defeating him, this account seems to have disappeared, and there has been no movement. Now that Sugu finally landed, he didn't hesitate at all. He immediately took out his X device and entered the virtual spiritual world martial arts dojo. Sugu's landing place in the virtual spiritual world was directly set up as a martial arts dojo. This time he landed at the entrance of the arena. Sugu walked straight in and began to match the opponent for this battle. Here he comes, the guy with the random weapon last time is here. That's him. Looking at it up close, he's not particularly strong. How does he use that heavy shield so well? It seems that in future battles, we must not be fooled by the opponent's appearance. Anyone who looks at this guy at the first glance can tell that this is a sophisticated defensive heavy equipment. I hope I can match this almighty god of war with a decent opponent today. Our university used this guy's performance in the last heavy equipment game as a case study, so I paid special attention to this guy. I hope I can learn from him in his battle today. Some reloading tips. As soon as Sugu entered the stage, spectators entered the auditorium one after another. Those watching looked at Sugu and there was a burst of whispers. Thanks to the coquettish assassin uploading the video of his defeat and it went viral. Compared to the last time, Sugu's battle was much better with no one paying attention except Ma Mingji. There were already more than 1,000 people in the audience. This is a relatively rare battle in the cannon fodder section where no one is paying attention. I don't know what kind of opponent the almighty martial god will be matched with this time. The coquettish assassin murmured as he looked at Sugu's back. The challenge letter he sent to his account was ignored by Sugu, and it was almost impossible to match the same opponent twice in a row based on the mechanism of the martial arts dojo. This time, he honestly acted as an audience. Brother, do you want to join our big family? At this moment, a chubby face came over and handed a flyer with a mysterious website address printed on it to the coquettish assassin. The coquettish assassin looked at Ma Mingji's face in the game and said with a speechless expression, "Please leave this weird little advertisement to others, I have a wife. Don't come to me for pyramid schemes, I'm really poor." Ma Mingji was stunned for a moment, and immediately understood that the other party might have misunderstood, and immediately said, "Brother, you are mistaken. I am not engaged in color, let alone pyramid schemes. This is a serious website, and the place where we gather is the fans of the website." The coquettish assassin clicked on the website link on the flyer, and the expression on his face became even more speechless. You just played one game in the cannon fodder section and you already have loyal fans. And the only video uploaded on the website is of beating me. Sorry, forget it, I'm not interested. The coquettish assassin sighed and returned the flyer to Ma Mingji. At this moment, his eyes narrowed slightly and he looked in the direction of the arena and said, "The match has been completed. The almighty martial god's opponent this time is here." In the arena, Sugu raised his eyes and looked at the figures gradually appearing opposite him. That was his opponent today. The man wears a mask that covers half of his face, making it difficult to see his age and appearance. He is a muscular man with a height of 1.9 meters. Visually, he should be a warrior or heavy equipment, but the ID floating above his head is reincarnation of the gun god. Is the opponent a long-range warrior? Sugu glanced at the other person's hands, which were rough and full of scars. A smile appeared on his lips, as if he had found an interesting opponent. The man with the ID name reincarnation of the gun god noticed Sugu's gaze in an instant and quickly put his hands behind his back. The pair of beast-like eyes stared at Sugu through the mask, as if sizing up his next prey. At least he's more presentable than the guy with the coxcomb hair last time. Feeling the extremely dangerous aura exuding from the other party, Sugu thought to himself. After seeing the opponent's ID, a small discussion broke out in the audience. It's actually him, the reincarnation of the god of guns. I really didn't expect that he would collide with the almighty god of martial arts. It's interesting now. This is a heavy weapon that doesn't look like a heavy weapon. It's a long-range weapon that doesn't look like a long-range weapon. The matching system of the martial arts dojo really has a kind of cold humor. Open the market, reload versus remote, who wins and who loses? Ma Mingji was confused when listening to these discussions. If it weren't for Sugu, he wouldn't pay attention to what happened in the martial arts dojo, and he wouldn't know anything about these players. So he could only ask the guy with the coxcomb hair next to him for advice. Brother, what is the origin of this gun god reincarnation? Is he strong or not? The coquettish assassin heard someone ask him. As a host, he likes to show off and immediately gushed. Strong must mean strong. After all, the martial arts dojo system will match you with opponents of a similar level to you based on your past performance. This reincarnation of the gunslinger can be said to be the hottest rookie during the cannon fodder period. With 2 modified large-caliber laser guns, he has won 15 games in a row, and his momentum is very strong. But because he is too tall, and in every battle he reveals a murderous aura that wants to rush forward and tear his opponent alive. He is not like a lightweight long-range fighter at all, so this matter is often brought out ridicule. But I judge that if this guy continues his winning streak, there is a high probability that he will be promoted to the Brave Division when the ranks are redetermined this year. Speaking of this, the coquettish assassin was a little envious as he spoke. The Brave section was considered to be the pinnacle of his career. But the strength shown by the reincarnation of the gun god and the almighty martial god on the field now can be said to be destined for the Brave Division. 15 consecutive victories. Ma Mingji smacked his lips slightly after hearing this. It seemed that he was indeed a strong man. Then he asked the second question, which made him a little nervous. Brother, you look very understanding. Can you tell me who is stronger between these 2 people? After hearing this, the coquettish assassin thought for a moment and then blurted out. It must be almighty martial god. As a heavy weapon, it has more advantages than long-range warriors in single-player confrontations. When gun god reincarnation has no support from his teammates, what almighty martial god has to do is to rush forward and use his skills. With the strength advantage of heavy equipment, you can just crush him at close range. And from the battle between almighty martial god and colorful assassin, it can be seen that he is also quite accomplished in pace. It is also extremely difficult for gun god reincarnation to not let him get close. And according to the general rules of the martial arts dojo, generally those whose opponents have a low winning streak or a lower rank will have the right to choose the battlefield. As long as you choose a battlefield with a small and complex terrain, almighty martial god can be said to have reserved this place. A battle won. After hearing this, Ma Mingji nodded repeatedly. He understood after hearing that all the other parties' inferences were based on the fact that Sugu still used the heavy shield from the last time. It seems that this competition is quite mysterious. He knew his brother too well, even though the guy who was hiding his ID in front of him spoke clearly and logically to himself, and it was a feasible tactic. But Sugu will definitely not do this. The style of play he chooses must be the one with the most barrages. Sure enough, after Sugu once again browsed through the weapon library available in the martial arts dojo, he skillfully pressed the 2 buttons, Random Weapon, and Random Battlefield. In front of Sugu, the 2 pages of battlefield and weapons turned into 2 high-speed rotating turntables, constantly rotating. And his move made the murderous aura on the reincarnation of the gun god on the opposite side become even more intense. He stared at Sugu intently, as if he would have rushed in immediately if the battle had not been completed before the battlefield transformation was completed. This guy actually dares to challenge me. What the hell is this all-powerful god of war doing? He's using random weapons again. Holy shit, he's so pretentious. If I were a gun master, I would kill him right away. If someone kills him like this, I feel like I won't be able to see anyone for a week. Didn't you see that the gunman's face turned dark? He is a heavy armored warrior, and he still uses this random method. How can he fight with a weapon of another profession? You know, among the 4 major professions, the heavy armored warrior has the least changes and the worst adaptability. The entire audience was stunned by Sugu's actions. From the last battle, this almighty martial god is not an experienced heavy armored warrior. Why is he still using random weapons now? Isn't he afraid of switching to weapons of other martial arts professions? And the coquettish assassin who has been staring at the arena was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He couldn't figure out why the almighty martial god made this choice. The almighty martial god used this trick on him last time. Wasn't it because he lacked seriousness and respect when fighting him, so he deliberately used this option to wake himself up? Why is he using this on reincarnation of the gun god now? The other party is here to fight with you properly, and you are not provoking him completely unnecessarily. Do these two know each other privately and have any personal grudges? The coquettish assassin muttered to himself. The two of them should not know each other. Ma Mingji felt the heated discussion in the audience, and his face twitched. His brother said that he was not interested in being a star, but his flamboyant style of play was really a natural eye-catcher. The emotions of thousands of people were completely mobilized by him, although many of them were now spraying him. Soon, the 2 turntables in front of Su Ji-yu stopped. Weapon: Black Gold Sword of Alien Blood. The Black Gold Sword series, the basic weapon of the warrior, was integrated with the corpses of the alien race in the starry sky, making it more solid. Battlefield: Swamp. The battlefield is still neutral. In this swamp area, every warrior has to consume more soul power to prevent himself from falling into the swamp. This is not friendly for both sides. But in terms of weapons, the almighty god of war did not randomly select a weapon that matches his own. Although the Black Gold Sword is a relatively versatile weapon, it is too much of a weakening for a warrior to fail to choose a handy weapon. The next battle will probably be a one-sided massacre. The coquettish assassin said with some disappointment. He came to witness the battle of the man who defeated him, but he didn't expect to see such a result. The arena began to change, and soon it turned into a black and gray swamp. Su Ji-yu and the reincarnation of the gun god both used their soul power and stepped on the surface of the swamp. The reincarnation of the gun god looked at Su Ji-yu and said coldly, "No matter what reason you provoke me and try to anger me, I have to tell you that you did it." Those cold eyes were full of murderous intent. "In the next battle, I will definitely make you regret your decision." The battlefield was switched, and the death battle began. The reincarnation of the gun god pulled out his 2 large-caliber laser guns, and the 2 guns sounded at the same time, firing 6 shots in an instant. Sea-level gun fighting technique, point shooting. 3 bullets were fired at different vital positions, and 3 were used to block the movement. The gun god reincarnation used a killing move to end the opponent. Su Ji-yu, who was not protected by a heavy shield, seemed to be in a desperate situation from the beginning. Looking at the soul bullets shot at him, Su Ji-yu smiled. He leaned forward, kicked the ground with his feet, and attacked directly in the direction of the reincarnation of the gun god without any intention of dodging. Facing the deadly bullets flying towards his vitals in a straight line, Su Ji-yu swung the black gold sword in his hand as he wished. Dang, dang, dang. The black gold sword accurately slashed on the trajectory of the 3 bullets. The kinetic energy of the soul bullets was powerful, and the 3 slashing sounds were louder than the other. But Su Gu's sword was very steady, as if what he just chopped was just a flying goose feather. The eyes of the reincarnation of the gun god condensed. This slashing that seemed to be tempered by thousands of hammers was a master of swordsmanship. It seems that this guy is lucky. He can actually get the weapon he is best at randomly. The reincarnation of the gun god quickly distanced himself. If the long-range warrior was approached, it would be over. While retreating, the laser gun in the gun god's right hand kept shaking, firing one arc gun after another. He shot at Su Gu's direction at various tricky angles to interfere with Su Ji-yu, who wanted to get close. and his left hand kept inputting superimposed soul power into another large-caliber laser gun. This is the classic long-range fighting method, kiting the opponent while accumulating strength. When the superimposed soul power in their weapons is large enough, one shot can pry open the heavy shell. At this moment, the audience in the audience seats looked at the situation in the arena, and the expressions on their faces became a little dull. There is no doubt that this contest is a rare, boutique-level competition in the cannon fodder stage. Whether it is the almighty martial god or the reincarnation of the gun god, they have a very deep accumulation of martial arts. But what confused them was another thing. They watched the almighty martial god wielding the black gold sword in his hand in a chic and freehand manner. No matter how strange the trajectory of the arc gun shot from the reincarnation of the gun god was, he could easily cut it open. What a strong sword-wielding skill. However, aren't you a heavy armored warrior? Those audience members who wanted to watch him fight and learn heavy armored skills for the title of the almighty martial god were now extremely confused. Isn't this ID a heavy armored warrior? What kind of warrior is he? Can anyone tell me? Someone couldn't help asking, but no one present could answer his question. And the most confused person in the entire audience was the coquettish assassin who was recently defeated by the almighty martial god. The coquettish assassin looked at the operation of the almighty martial god on the field and opened his eyes in disbelief. What on earth is going on? For ordinary people, it is very good to be able to master a weapon in their lifetime. But what is the situation in front of me? Why did he just abuse my ID with a heavy armored shield a few days ago, and then he could use a sword again? This is using weapons across martial arts professions, and the proficiency is so abnormally high. The coquettish assassin felt dizzy, and everything that happened in front of him challenged his basic martial arts concept. After all, his ID is almighty martial god, so it's normal for him to know more things. Just then, the fat man who claimed to be a fan of the almighty martial god patted his shoulder and said. The corner of the coquettish assassin's mouth twitched. Is this an ID problem? In the arena, the duel between Su Ji-yu and the reincarnation of the gun god continued. As time went by, Su Ji-yu had gradually seen through the ballistic habits of the reincarnation of the gun god. He was moving faster and faster, and the arc gun could no longer stop him from getting close. A trace of cold sweat appeared on the forehead of the reincarnation of the gun god. He really didn't expect that the cannon fodder section could match such a master and force himself to this point. Although the soul power storage of the laser gun in his left hand is not perfect, he can only fight now. Just when he raised his hand to shoot, Sugu's eyes condensed. He had been waiting for this opportunity. B-level combat skills, 100 steps flying sword. The sword of the alien blood alloy flew out of his hand, like threading a needle, and directly shattered the energy-storing laser gun in the left hand of the reincarnation of the gun god. Then Su Ji-yu moved forward, grasped the hilt of the sword again before the flying sword landed, and pointed the long sword in his hand at the neck of the reincarnation of the gun god. This battle is over, the audience outside the arena whispered. It is impossible to turn the tables when a warrior with such strength is close to him at a distance. How could this happen? The coquettish assassin murmured. He thought that the almighty martial god would win from the beginning, but the way he won was too different from what he imagined. Using the heavy armor of the sword, what the hell? Ma Mingji beside him looked proud. When he returned, the almighty martial god would definitely gain another wave of fans. With Su Ji's style of play, if he played a few more times, maybe the website would be profitable. But in the audience, when they were waiting for the winner of the martial arts arena to be announced, these people waited and waited but could not get it. What's going on? The audience, confused, focused their attention on the arena again. Su Ji-yu pointed his sword at the neck of the reincarnated gun god, but his eyes showed vigilance. He was even more vigilant than when he faced the arc gun and the energy gun just now. Are you going to continue pretending? Su Ji-yu said calmly. Pretend? What are you pretending for? The audience staring at the arena looked confused. You have been pretending for the whole fight. The reincarnated gun god looked at Su Ji-yu and smiled. This guy is really interesting. He probably saw through his disguise and judged his real martial arts profession the first time he saw him. So even though the weapon had been shot down, he did not rush in, but chose to maintain a certain safe position. I really didn't expect that I could meet such an interesting opponent while practicing my gun. Since you want to play, then I will accompany you. The reincarnation of the gun god's muscles were tense, and he looked even more burly at this moment. Then he made a move that made the audience speechless. He threw away the 2 laser guns in his hands. After the 2 silver laser guns fell into the swamp, they sank quickly. Did this gun god give up? The people in the audience looked at this situation and stroked their foreheads. It's understandable. He was suppressed to this extent by the almighty martial god with 2 guns. Now 1 gun has been useless. Is there any need to watch the next battle? It's really boring. It ended like this. The long-range warrior can be said to be the most weapon-dependent profession among all martial arts professions. Directly giving up the weapon in hand is almost the same as directly saying surrender. And then, the reincarnation of the gun god made a move that shocked everyone at the scene. The soul power of the reincarnated gun god surged all over his body, concentrated on his arms, and turned into soul armor visible to the naked eye. A-level combat skills, soul armor. Then he ignored the black gold knife pointing at his neck and punched directly at Sugu's face. Before the fist reached, the fist wind had arrived. The strong wind danced Sugu's black hair, and a fist as big as a bull suddenly attacked. Sugu tilted his head to the right and avoided the punch that hit his face. But the wind that swirled around his fist still cut his cheek and left a wound. Scarlet blood flowed into Sugu's mouth along the wound. He took a lick and looked at the enemy in front of him. Yes, this is what it looks like. The reincarnation of the gun god snorted coldly. Originally, he was planning to blow the opponent's head off with this punch to end the battle. Being able to react to a surprise attack at such a close range, this guy is indeed difficult to deal with. It was only a matter of time before he was promoted to the brave level. The reincarnated gun god's attacks did not stop, and the next punch had already arrived. Boom! Suguti blocked with his sword, and the next moment the fists and swords met, his body flew up on the spot like a cannonball. This monster with huge strength actually blew Sugu away with his sword. The expressions on the faces of the spectators in the auditorium froze as they looked at this scene. What happened? This battle was exciting, but the things the 2 warriors kept showing left these people with questions. First, they originally thought it was a heavily armored all-powerful martial god. They chose a random weapon and rolled themselves a black gold sword. I originally thought that this guy was going to kill himself with the black gold sword, but he reloaded and was very good with the sword, directly suppressing the long-range warrior. That's all. The long-range warrior who was originally in a desperate situation was reincarnated by the gunslinger and took the initiative to throw away his weapons, and then fought hand-to-hand with the almighty martial god. And what's with this exaggerated power and melee combat ability? What on earth is going on in this battle? Someone murmured. Many viewers felt that their brains were running out. This person is not a cannon fodder at all. The coquettish assassin opened his eyes wide and stared at the reincarnation of the gun god and said. When Ma Mingji saw this, he immediately asked anxiously, "What's going on? Brother, please explain." Sugu, who had just suddenly had the advantage, was suppressed, and the offensive and defensive momentum changed in an instant. This made Ma Mingji extremely anxious. He had just established a fan website and did not want to see Sugu defeated in the second game. The coquettish assassin gritted his teeth and said, "Some people who want to broaden their martial arts path will choose to buy anew this situation. Ma Mingji, that is to say, this shameless person opened a trumpet to abuse the cannon fodder, right? In layman's terms, it's like this." The coquettish assassin nodded and said, "Judging from the current attack line, the true martial arts profession of this future gun god should be a berserker. The owner behind this ID is a madman. He actually uses a long-range warrior that is completely opposite to his own profession to start a new challenge. I guess he is not the kind of unknown person who can drop out of the ranks at any time in the brave ranks. When this battle is over, his real ID will be exposed, and this account will be useless." After listening to the coquettish assassin's explanation, Ma Mingji's eyes almost popped out. The berserker can actually win 15 times in a row using a gun. Now that he has given up his gun, how strong will he be? Ma Mingji could only clasp his hands and pray carefully for Sugu. The second opponent I was matched with in the martial arts dojo had a level higher than my own, and my brother was really unlucky. Sugu flew more than 10 meters away and landed. The reincarnated fist of the gun god came over again, and the collision between the fist and the sword actually made a violent sound of gold and iron clashing. Sugu stabilized his body and was not punched away like just now, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was being suppressed by the pair of fists wrapped around the soul armor. He can still hold on now, but if he can't break the situation quickly, this oppression will be like a swamp under his feet, sinking people deeper and deeper until they truly enter a deadlock. The almighty martial god's defeat has been revealed, and the outcome of this battle has been decided. This punch is as heavy as a cannonball. I can't think of how the almighty martial god can defend himself. This battle is over. This guy deserves what he deserves. He insists on random weapons. If he had used a heavy shield, he might have been able to hold on a little longer in the face of the berserker's onslaught. Now, all I can say is haha. The people in the audience shook their heads as they looked at Sugu, who was constantly being suppressed. Many people have already chosen to withdraw from the audience, and there should be no reversal in this battle. Then at this moment, the gun god reincarnated in the gap between the fists, and a sword light flashed through. There was a bloody hole in his shoulder. The reincarnation of the gun god followed the sword light and looked at Sugu holding the sword, with a look of surprise in his eyes. Under his own suppression, he could still fight back. And what kind of combat skill was that just now? How could it be so fast? The reincarnation of the gun god endured the pain from his shoulder. Although I don't know how this guy did it, I won't be hit by the same move twice. The suppression has begun and must not stop. I am a berserker. Just when the gunman was about to ignore the wound and continue the attack. The next moment, the same skill, but in a different position, caused a similar flower of blood to bloom on his right leg. Call out. This time the gunslinger was reincarnated without any hesitation and quickly backed away, his face full of disbelief. This guy actually saw through it and completely adapted to his own attack rhythm in such a short period of time. In the audience, the coquettish assassin had the same expression. Why is it like this again? This reincarnation of the gun god has the strength of a brave warrior, why is he the same as me? He said in disbelief. The last time he fought with the almighty god of war, it was the same. As the fight went on, it seemed that all his moves were seen through by the opponent. No matter how to organize the attack next, it was useless. Who are you? The reincarnation of the gun god stared at Suji and asked coldly. With such a level, it is impossible for him to be an unknown person, but he really couldn't recall the corresponding name from the battle with him. Which family is this almighty god of war's hidden trump card? Suji stood quietly in place. Facing the enemy's retreat, he had no desire to pursue and let it leave his attack range. And he was too lazy to answer this question. He looked at the enemy calmly. The indifferent eyes seemed to be looking at a toy he was tired of playing with. Then, Suji pointed his sword at the neck of the reincarnation of the gun god, and slowly slashed it downward. This is a classic provocative action, and the meaning is very simple. The next move, I will finish you off. The reincarnation of the gun god's eyes condensed slightly, and then he laughed angrily. Was he underestimated? Do you think you can win just by stabbing me twice? The reincarnation of the gun god said coldly, and then a group of steam began to emit from the wounds on his body. The two wounds where bones could be seen began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. And a layer of gray fur began to grow on the body of the reincarnation of the gun god, his ears became sharp, and his pupils changed to vertical pupils. A-level superpower, beast transformation, werewolf. After activating the superpower, the reincarnation of the gun god seemed to have turned into a monster in ancient Western mythology. Looking at his appearance, everyone in the audience couldn't help but widen their eyes. Anderson, he is Anderson from the Stark family. At this moment, everyone recognized his identity. This beast transformation ability is too representative. Only one family in the entire human race can do it. The Stark, one of the 10 martial arts families that dominates the solar system and is above any federal government. This is one of the iconic abilities that only their family has. This Anderson is a sophomore student at the Stark Family University. He entered the Brave stage in his freshman year. I guess this time he hopes to expand his martial arts and try to reach the elite stage. Soon someone found information on the internet and revealed Anderson's intelligence. At this moment, everyone's eyes were once again on Suji, who who was confronting the monster that turned into a werewolf. What a pity. In the audience, someone sighed softly. Everyone knew tacitly what he was regretting. If the almighty martial god had not let the gun god go easily and did not give him the opportunity to use his ability, there would still be a possibility of victory. But now it's over. This is the name Stark, the reputation created by ruling the top of mankind for 100 years. According to the information circulating on the internet, once Anderson uses beast transformation, not only will his body be transformed, his body data will be doubled, his pain sensitivity will be reduced, and his body will have the effect of super speed recovery of sea-level superpowers. The coquettish assassin looked at the information and sighed slightly. Just looking at the description in the text can make him feel a headache. If he put it in his own case, he really doesn't know how to deal with this monster. Ma Mingji beside him swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That punch can knock people more than 10 meters away. Can it be strengthened? Ma Mingji looked at Su Jiyu in the arena with a face full of worry. Anderson's scarlet eyes were staring at Sugu not far away. When the two looked at each other, Sugu's eyes were still so calm and indifferent. It seems that in his opinion, whether Anderson uses his powers or not, the outcome will not change. Next, I'm going to cut off your head to see if you can still pretend like this. Anderson looked at Sugu with a sinister tone, and the nails on his hands turned into sharp claws. The beast's claws rubbed back and forth, making a harsh buzzing sound. Dots of sparks fell between the gaps in the claws. After saying that, the two figures disappeared at the same time, and then there was a harsh sound at the midpoint of the previous confrontation between the two. Centered around that midpoint, the large swaths of mud in the swamp began to push apart, revealing the moist soil beneath the mud. Then came the second and third whistles. The speed of these two people was so fast that the spectators in the auditorium could no longer capture their movements with the naked eye. After dozens of howls erupted in succession, the two people who had a quick exchange finally separated. Sugu and Anderson stood back to back. Who won and who lost? At this moment, everyone was looking at the scene of the arena attentively, not daring to blink at all. Look, the sword of the almighty martial god is broken. A sharp-eyed spectator pointed at the different blood-black gold sword in Sugu's hand. All that was left of the long sword was the hilt, but the bone claws in Anderson's hands were intact. Even the weapons are gone, and the final winner still belongs to Anderson Stark. It is too difficult for ordinary people to defeat warriors from the 10 major families. This battle was fought brilliantly by the almighty martial god. Everyone sighed slightly. No one mocks the almighty martial god. Being able to fight like this with people from the top 10 families is enough to prove his excellence. Wait a minute, there seems to be something strange about Anderson's. At this time, the coquettish assassin looked at Anderson, who had always turned his back to everyone, and said with a frown. The assassin's keen perception allowed him to still feel the fatal threat in Sugu, but Anderson was just the opposite. Anderson slowly turned around and looked at him, and everyone's throats tightened in an instant. Section after section of the broken sword was accurately inserted into his brain, throat, heart, leg arteries and other key locations. This was enough to cause multiple fatal wounds, and because of the werewolf's high-speed regeneration characteristics, Anderson did not die immediately. Anderson turned his head and stared at Sugu's back. These broken blades inserted into his body were not destroyed by him during the confrontation with Sugu. Instead, Sugu took the initiative to damage it, and then used the broken blade to cut into his vitals, blocking the high-speed regeneration. A warrior who can use a sword like this cannot be unknown. Anderson looked at Sugu's back, trying to find some traces of the strong man in his memory. But no matter who it was, it seemed like they couldn't match it. Puff! The power of the supernatural power was finally exhausted, and the blood on Anderson's body sputtered. Until the moment he fell to the ground, he didn't recognize who was using the poker-faced ID he was fighting with. After defeating his opponent, Sugu's face remained calm, as if nothing could shake him. When the smoke and dust cleared after the werewolf fell, the mechanical judgment sound of the martial arts dojo rang. Winner, Almighty Martial God. Sugu is offline. At this moment, until the two warriors disappeared, the entire auditorium of the arena was silent. Even though Anderson is just a pawn of the Stark family, he is still a member of the Stark family. The Stark who reigned at one of the pinnacles of mankind. Su, the almighty martial god, I just know he is the strongest, you are the martial god. Before the audience in the auditorium fully accepted this shocking fact, Ma Mingji took the lead in shouting out bursts of cheers. He really didn't expect it. He knew Brother Su was fierce, but he didn't expect him to be so fierce. The warriors from the 10 major families have all been selected by him. Will there be anyone who Brother Su can't stand down in the future? The coquettish assassin looked at the last scene with the same disbelief. He looked at the almighty martial god who was still standing on the field and the broken sword in his hand with a look of confusion on his face. Could it be that his true martial arts profession is actually a close combat warrior? Is the heavy armor just his disguise? So what does it mean to be easily killed by his heavy equipment? And can anyone really do it, balancing the 2 major martial arts professions? Or, as his ID said, the god of war. The coquettish assassin looked at the little fat man who was shouting beside him. After hesitating for a moment, he patted his shoulder and said, little fat guy, please give me a flyer from your almighty god of war fan website. Moon, Stark Family University, Virtual Spiritual World Exploration Room. The outer shell of a sleeping cabin-style X device kept flashing red light, and the door opened after a moment. A white man with blonde hair, a tall build, and a shirtless body walked out of the warehouse. His face was gloomy, and it was obvious that his experience in the virtual spiritual world had put him in a bad mood. No, I'm laughing to death. Our Stark University's best rookie last year, a super genius who became the main selection team of the solar system's high schools in his second year, and the greatest berserker in the future, Mr. Anderson, actually overturned in the cannon fodder section. Quote, a man with black curly hair and a heavy fire-patterned sniper rifle pointed at Anderson and rolled on the ground with laughter. When Anderson came out of the X device, Schiller, the man who had just laughed wildly, came over, hugged his shoulders and said, I just checked, the man you fought with just recently registered an account to log into the virtual spirit world. There is only one battle record in the martial arts dojo, and he is an out-and-out novice. The first berserker in our school was actually crushed by a novice. Faced with Schiller's ridicule, although Anderson had an ugly expression, he rarely went berserk and got angry. In his mind, he was still thinking about the figure of the man who had just defeated him. I know you admire our boss and want to develop your talent for firearms. But everyone has their own specialty. If you, a berserker, can also have excellent long-range capabilities, I can't still be a jerk. Look, you who use long-range weapons can't even deal with those trash in the cannon fodder stage. Schiller continued to flirt with Anderson, talking endlessly. I told you to train well here, what are you talking about here? A stern but clear female voice interrupted the conversation between Schiller and Anderson. The two quickly separated and stood on both sides somewhat stiffly. Soon, a woman with silver hair and black eyes, wearing white armor, came over. She had a noble temperament, with 2 silver double guns with gorgeous wolf patterns on her waist. With a lazy expression, she looked like a wolf king patrolling the wolf pack when she looked at Schiller and Anderson. She was Kei Yuya, the captain of the 2, and the woman who might inherit the position of the head of the Stark family in the future. Anderson, it's a good thing to want to expand your martial arts path, but you also have to look at your own skills and the compatibility of your superpowers. Long-range warriors are not suitable for you. Don't waste time in the cannon fodder stage in the future. Rush to the elite stage as soon as possible. You are the only one in our team who is still staying in the brave stage. Kei Yuya looked at the X-Device warehouse with red light and immediately understood what was going on. He looked at Anderson and scolded. Even though he was directly reprimanded by the most respected captain, Anderson said nothing. A message popped up on his account, confirming that the battle video had been sent to him, and then it was projected directly on the wall. This is the tradition of many schools. After a battle fails, teammates are immediately asked to help review the game. Look at you using a long-range weapon to fight a cannon fodder, what game is there to review? It's funny. If you are a little more serious against an opponent of this level, you can just sweep it away. Schiller said boredly. The expression on Kei Yuya's face became even more lazy, as if she was about to fall asleep. The cannon fodder level of the battle really couldn't make her cheer up. Soon, Schiller frowned. Block the movement and hit the vital points. Your 6-shot pin-shaped gun is good and can be given a passing score. The following judgment is also correct. After the straight shot gun is confirmed to be ineffective against the opponent, choose to use the arc gun to delay time and accumulate strength. Your opponent, the almighty martial god, is of some level. Even such a tricky angle trajectory is useless. Is he really a cannon fodder? Watching the confrontation between the two sides, Schiller made some new judgments. It's okay, at least the opponent is of some level. If you really lose to those cannon fodders with average level, it would be a shame for the Stark family. Kei Yuya's eyelids, which were about to close, also lifted slightly. This was not a battle that she couldn't bear to watch at all. When the three saw the battle video, Anderson was forced into a desperate situation and gave up his double guns at the request of his opponent and fought with both hands. Schiller's face changed slightly, and he couldn't help pressing the pause button. Anderson, you were defeated by your opponent in close combat after you used the berserker fighting style. After hearing this question, Anderson's face looked frustrated, but he finally nodded. Kei Yuya looked at the battle video and lifted his cheek. Interesting. When the three of them watched the entire battle video again, the expressions on Schiller and Anderson's faces were a little complicated, while Kayuya had a vague smile on his face. She was thinking about what she would do if she stood on that battlefield and how long it would take to end the battle. Just like that, the virtual spirit world exploration room fell into silence. Finally, Anderson couldn't help but said to Schiller beside him, "Schiller, please help me check and take a look. Which family might this almighty god of war belong to? Is it the secret weapon prepared by the other 9 companies for the next martial arts competition among colleges and universities in the solar system?" Hearing Anderson say this, the expression on Schiller's face became serious. If it is really related to the other 9 companies, it needs to be taken seriously. He took out his portable screen projection computer and began to search for all information related to the almighty martial god. Kayuya ended the simulated battle in his mind. He looked at Anderson and Schiller and said, "No need to check. This almighty martial god has nothing to do with the Jew family. He is probably an ordinary civilian." After hearing this, Anderson's eyes widened and he couldn't help but retort, "Boss, are you kidding me? How could there be such a person among civilians? The practice of martial arts requires a huge amount of resources, but where do civilians get the resources?" Kayuya ignored Anderson. He pulled the progress bar of the battle video back to the time when Anderson threw away the laser gun and started a frontal attack with both fists. That was the only time in the entire battle that he suppressed the almighty martial god. The suppression did not last long, and was quickly broken by the almighty martial god using a very fast mysterious combat skill. "Anderson, tell me what combat skills your opponent used to disrupt your fighting rhythm?" Keiua asked calmly. Anderson manually slowed down the almighty martial god's move countless times. Looking at the shining sword light, the expression on his face was still confused. As a member of the Stark family, he had witnessed countless combat skills since he was a child, but he really couldn't recognize the almighty god of war. "It should be some kind of newly developed A-level combat skill that I don't know about yet," he said uncertainly. Keiua sneered and said, "Idiot, that's a C-level combat skill, Qingfeng stab. It's just that the proficiency is so frightening. It's obvious that the opponent has spent countless hours practicing this combat skill, so a change in quality leads to a change in quality. But if it were any other big family, it would be impossible for such a talented clansman to spend time practicing such shabby C-level combat skills." The expression on Anderson's face froze. C-level combat skills. Did the opponent only use C-level combat skills to achieve the effect of A-level combat skills? What a high level of proficiency this requires. Could it be that the all-powerful god of martial arts spent several years specializing in a C-level combat skill? The boss is right. If it were someone from the other 9 families, it would be impossible for his disciple to waste time like this. But if this almighty god of martial arts mastered an A-level combat skill that suited him, the battle would have ended here. He had no chance to use his powers at all. "I must fight this almighty god of war again." Anderson's eyes flashed with anger. He was an elite disciple trained by the Stark family. If he lost to an unknown person like this, where would he put his face? And it's not like he has no chance of winning. In this battle, he also didn't use his specialized weapons. Another fight, the outcome is unknown. "Yes, you are ambitious." Keiua nodded and praised. There is no aristocratic family in history that has always been victorious and eternally undefeated. The Stark family can be defeated, but cannot be knocked down. This is the spirit passed down by their family. At this moment, Schiller, who had been looking for information about the almighty god of war, suddenly ran over and said with a strange expression, "Boss, and Anderson, look at this." Schiller sent a URL to the two of them. After Anderson clicked on it, the expression on his face immediately became extremely weird. Martial God's House, the first communication home for fans of the almighty martial god. What the hell is this? Cannon Fodder Duan has a fan website. Where did you find such an unlucky website? Anderson was speechless for a while, and Kayuya looked at Schiller expressionlessly to see what he was going to say. Don't worry about what the website is. Take a look at the videos uploaded on the website, Schiller said quickly. After hearing this, Anderson turned down the page and saw two battle videos. One game was the one he just fought against the almighty martial god, and there was another one. After Anderson clicked on it, he looked at the opponent of the almighty martial god and saw that the opponent's ID name should be Assassin. Next is the almighty warrior as a warrior fighting an assassin. He's got random weapons again. Is this guy crazy? Reinstall heavy equipment to fight assassins. And in this kind of terrain. Is there any mistake? It turns out that when I was fighting with myself just now, didn't the almighty martial god deliberately provoke me and target me? Is randomizing weapons his normal operation? Watching the entire video, Anderson's head is filled with questions. After seeing the victory of the almighty god of war, he was even more confused. He can defeat himself with a sword, and he can force an assassin to death with a heavy defensive shield. What on earth was the guy the first was fighting against just now? After watching this video, Kayuya, who was standing by, gradually showed a lively expression on her face. She was already extremely beautiful, and now she looked like a gem refracted by the sun, with a dazzling feeling. The level of the warrior and the heavy armor was good. Although the quality of the soul power was still a little low, this almighty martial god could actually ignite a little fighting spirit in her. Kayuya's black pupils gradually turned into a dark blue, and two balls of ghost fire seemed to be jumping in her eyes. Anderson and Schiller, who were standing by, saw the captain like this, and they didn't dare to breathe. After looking at each other, they prepared to sneak away quietly. The captain at this time was the most terrifying, and she must not attract her attention. But the two of them were obviously late. Anderson and Schiller, accompany me to practice in the martial arts room tonight, Kayuya said in a high-spirited tone. Don't spare me, boss. Anderson, the berserker of Stark University, and Schiller, the sniper, wailed. In the dormitory of Suji-Yu, Starry Sky Martial Arts University. Suji-Yu took off his headgear, and then there was another voice in his mind. After the consciousness body fought in the virtual spirit world, you have a new understanding of martial arts. And with this understanding, complete the Tianyuan Gong. Complete a breath, Tianyuan Gong, completion progress +7. Complete a breath, Tianyuan Gong, completion progress +4. Suji-Yu thought to himself. Sure enough, just like last time, my ability will constantly correct my soul power operation route according to my battle in the virtual spirit world. One day, this Tianyuan Gong will become completely different in my hands. Just when Suji-Yu was about to continue adjusting, the change in the Jodian operation route caused his own soul power disorder. Ma Mingji ran over excitedly with his mobile phone. Suji-Yu, you are famous. Your ID of the almighty martial god has become famous. Ma Mingji looked excited and waved a stack of paper information that he had just printed out in front of Sugu. The battle you just had ended in less than an hour, and it went straight to the top of the popular video list related to the martial arts dojo. In terms of combat enthusiasm, the cannon fodder section crushes all the elite sections. Many people left messages saying that this was the first time they had seen him in so many years. That's not all. Ma Mingji put aside the data in his hand, opened the backend of the website, Martial God's Home, on his mobile phone and said, "Our website, without any promotion at all, received over 600,000 views within an hour, and now has more than 10,000 registered users. Advertisers have come to me and I can make money by running some ads now if I want to. Brother Su, if you continue like this, I will have to buy a new server in order to run this website before long. The little fat man became more and more excited as he talked, and started dancing as he talked. After hearing this, Sugu had a complicated expression on his face. He also opened the website and started browsing. The website that no one was paying attention to just now has more than 10,000 registered users, and they are frantically posting and discussing it. There are roughly 2 centers of topic, all related to Sugu, and one of them is about the random weapon selection. There is no doubt that this random weapon is a great tactic of Brother Wushan. In this way, the opponent's mentality is greatly unbalanced before he starts fighting, allowing Brother Wushan to seize the opportunity before he starts to attack. I don't think that's the case. It's probably a way of martial arts practice for Brother Wushan. He is exploring his own potential through this method. I think this almighty god of war is a business genius. He has earned enough traffic from 2 battles. Maybe there is a whole company behind him that operates specifically for him. Sugu looked at a group of people who might not be warriors, analyzed his actions from various angles, and then used different tricks to brag about himself. He was silent for a moment, then registered his account and posted a message. Is there a possibility that the almighty god of war opens random weapons just because he has difficulty in choosing? There are too many weapons in the martial arts dojo. Does it give him a headache? Soon, Sugu was sprayed. Do you have any brains upstairs? How could a warrior like the almighty martial god do such a childish thing? Please don't make baseless accusations. This is a gathering place for fans of almighty god of war. If you don't like it, get out. If you don't see Brother Wu Shen's great tactics, just shut up and watch and learn more. Sugu silently logged out of the account, then continued diving, and then looked at the second most noisy topic on the forum related to him. What is the martial arts profession of the almighty martial god? Does this need to be discussed? The almighty martial god must be a warrior. He killed Anderson Stark with a sword. He was a member of the Stark family. It's really not necessarily true. In the last battle, the almighty martial god's suppressive power as a heavy armor was too strong. At first glance, it is undoubtedly an old heavy armor. The charming assassin on the opposite side will be like a chicken to be killed. Ahem, I am the coquettish assassin myself. Let's discuss it, brothers. Don't bring me up to curse. I am very innocent and my psychological shadow has not healed today. I'll give my own testimony. Let me tell you how it feels to fight against the god of war. ... After Sugu briefly browsed the website, he turned off his phone. His heart was a little complicated now. For his behavior to attract so many people's discussion and attention, he is naturally very happy from the bottom of his heart. People are somewhat vain. But I want to be a pure warrior. Sugu shook his head helplessly. Brother Su, don't worry about this. Anyway, you don't have to worry about anything. As long as you know that this website can help us make money, it's enough. Ma Mingji hugged Su Jiyu and said with a smile. Then, he handed over his mobile phone. Compared to the website, Brother Su, take a look at this. You just defeated Anderson Stark and the Stark University responded. Sugu's expression condensed slightly. Among the 10 major Stark families, he was not so arrogant as to think that Anderson could represent the level of Stark. We will not underestimate these top families, which exist longer than the history of human martial arts. He quickly found Stark University's public text response. First, they admitted that the one fighting the almighty god of war was Anderson Stark. While not avoiding his identity, he also praised the strength of his opponent Sugu in the following paragraphs. The next step is the key point. Stark University hopes that the almighty god of war will fight Anderson again, preferably in the real world. They wanted to get to know the real almighty martial god and were willing to make some investments in his martial arts path. This is the style of these big aristocratic families, Ma Mingji said expressionlessly. After discovering the geniuses among the people, they began to find ways to contact and absorb them and let them be used for their own use. Brother Su, if you agree to go directly to the moon to contact the Stark family, you can receive a large amount of investment. In the future, you may be able to marry a collateral branch of their family and give birth to a litter of wolf pups. Hearing his good brother's words, Sugu just smiled. Although what the other party said was a bit unpleasant, it was a reminder to himself. He turned off the screen of his phone and said calmly, I'm not from the same family as those aristocratic families. No one in this world can afford to interfere with my martial arts path. Ma Mingji smiled. His brother knew that if he took the money from the family, he would have to spit out more. That was enough. He also believed that his brother would never change his decision about the future easily. Just like when almost everyone in the school advised him to take the liberal arts exam, he still wanted to follow the path of martial arts. Mingji, I'm going out soon, do you want to come with me? Sugu said suddenly. How long have you been in the dormitory? Where are you going? Of course it's the 1,000-story martial arts tower where Starry Sky Martial Arts University teaches its martial arts. Sugu said with a smile on his face. Previously at Jia Sanli, he had obtained an advance entry and exit permit for the place of martial arts. He can study freely there all day long. I have long heard about the Starry Sky Martial Arts University. This is the first martial arts university in mankind that was established in the Dark Ages. It has the largest collection of books on martial arts in the world. Sugu could not wait to see its elegance. After hearing Sugu's next plan, Ma Mingji immediately rolled his eyes and continued. No need, I'm a businessman, I'm not interested in martial arts matters. I'd better stay at home, apply for a few more accounts on the Martial God House website, and find a way to help you maintain your fans. As he spoke, Ma Mingji buried his body in the sofa, ignored Sugu, and picked up the screen projection computer to start operating. Sugu shrugged. It was expected that his brother would say this. He himself put on a white military uniform. Then he jogged towards the combat skills library alone. The Starry Sky Martial Arts University is surprisingly large. After all, it is a university that covers half of the city, but the place where martial arts is taught within the university is extremely conspicuous. It was so conspicuous that Sugu could see it as soon as he raised his head. The 1,000-story building towering into the clouds looks like a sharp sword thrust into the earth from the ground. There is the martial arts 1,000-story tower of Shinkong Martial Arts University. Until Sugu slowly ran to the entrance of the tower, he stood at the bottom of the 1,000-story tower and looked up. This was the first time he felt a sense of vastness in front of a building. It's bigger than I expected, Sugu said with some emotion. For the first half of my life, I only studied martial arts in Hangcheng No. 1 middle school and comprehensive high school. When I came here, I really saw the world. Just as Sugu was about to enter from the entrance, a student on duty blocked his way. After taking one look at Sugu's appearance, they said to him with smiles on their faces. I'm sorry, classmate, you can't go in for the time being. Sugu looked at the two male students blocking him. One had a short haircut and the other had shoulder-length hair. He took out the certificate given to him by Understanding Sanli and said, I entered the 1,000-story pagoda to practice cultivation. This is the permission given by Teacher Xie. The person blocking the road glanced at the voucher, and then said calmly, although I have Director Xie's credentials, there are still some rules that must be observed. The gatekeeper smiled and handed over 2 pairs of bracelets and said, most of the people who come here are young and energetic young warriors, and many of the combat skills in the 1,000-layer martial arts tower are quite valuable, and some of them are already unique. So in order to protect the collection of combat skills, some young people who are prone to being enthusiastic should be given some exercise to avoid unnecessary losses. Every student who enters the 1,000-layered pagoda to practice must wear a gravity bracelet. It's this again. Sugu had a strange expression on his face. He thought about how 1 month before the college entrance examination, he wore a 3-gravity bracelet to practice. As a result, he was too selfless and lost control of his strength. The police came to check the water meter. Junior, it's not that we are making things difficult for you. This is indeed the school's rule. It will be very difficult for us if you don't abide by it. The 2 people blocking the road looked at Sugu's expression and said helplessly. Sugu recalled what Xie Sanli said to him on the floating car, how much you can learn when entering a martial arts place depends on your own ability. Then he glanced at the pair of gravity bracelets on the hands of the 2 of them. It seems that the reason for saying this is here. Sugu nodded and said, give me the gravity bracelet. Sugu took the bracelet, put it on and adjusted it to 5 times gravity. Then he walked easily into the 1,000-layered tower. Looking at Sugu's back as he walked in, the two gatekeepers looked at each other, then immediately took out their mobile phones and made a call. Jung-Lu, what you told us has been taken care of. The two broken gravity bracelets have been put on by Sugu. Okay, don't forget what we agreed on. After hanging up the phone, the man with short hair said hesitantly. Qian Hao, is it really okay for us to do this? The gravity bracelet given to Sugu is not detachable and will increase the gravity multiplier over time. It can increase to 20 times the gravity at most. An ordinary heavy-armed warrior, it can't withstand this gravity environment for long. And there is no requirement to wear a gravity bracelet when entering the 1,000-story tower in school. There is a huge gravity adjustment room inside the 1,000-story tower. The higher you go up, the greater the gravity level you endure. I'm afraid that if Sugu stays here too long, someone will die. The student with long hair named Qian Hao sneered. Li Chu, your courage is getting weaker and weaker. Didn't Jung-Lu already give us Sugu's information? This is an orphan. When we kick him, we are kicking a piece of cotton. At that time, with the blessing of gravity, let Sugu stay in the intensive care unit for several months. What can he do to us after he comes out of the hospital? After Li Chu heard this, he nodded with peace of mind. After hanging up the phone, Jung-Lu had a sinister look in his eyes. He was always thinking about the fact that Sugu snatched away the provincial champion. In his opinion, he should be the one to enter the 1,000-story pagoda to practice, but Sugu snatched away the opportunity. This made Jung-Lu, who was determined to retaliate, almost go crazy with anger every time he thought about it. Sugu, don't think that because Zhou Zhengsheng of the army is willing to protect you, you will have nothing to worry about. Since you have chosen a university with me, in the next 4 years, I will make you regret taking away my things. First, let you be seriously injured under high gravity. Not only will you not be able to learn martial arts in the 1,000-story tower, but you will also miss the school's next freshman competition. A month later, most students have entered the self-seeking realm and have their own exercises. Star Martial Arts University will organize a competition between students, which is the school's historical tradition. At that time, many outstanding instructors will also come here to observe. If Sugu misses this opportunity, he will miss an opportunity to appear in front of many outstanding martial arts instructors in the school. Jung-Lu felt a little better when he thought that his move had directly ruined 2 great opportunities for Sugu. When Sugu comes out of the 1,000-story tower at the end of a few days, I have to go and see what he's doing. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Jung-Lu's mouth, and he said slowly. ... When Sugu walked into the 1,000-story tower, the scene on the first floor made him click his tongue repeatedly. The area of more than 10,000 square meters is filled with wooden bookshelves, and naturally there are various combat skills books placed on them. Sugu made a visual inspection and found that there might be tens of millions of different martial arts books on one floor. In the central area, there is a training area that can be used by warriors of any profession, obviously for these people to practice combat skills. Sugu walked along a bookshelf and took down a combat skills book to read. And the moment Sugu was looking through the combat skills, the voice in his head started to sound. Complete 1 breath, C-level combat skill Night Rain Sword, experience plus 76, current combat skill proficiency is, first glimpse of the door. Complete 1 breath, C-level combat skill Night Rain Sword, experience plus 109, current combat skill proficiency is, slightly improved. Complete 1 breath, C-level combat skill Night Rain Sword, experience plus 97, current combat skill proficiency is, perfect mastery. Sugu stood quietly in place for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, he had achieved perfect mastery of this combat skill. Now that I have mastered C-level combat skills to the point of perfect mastery, there is no longer any obstacle for me. That is to say, breaking through to the point of mastering it requires hard work. Is this the benefit of improving the realm of martial arts and bringing about an improved vision? My abilities have also been improved, Sugu said calmly. Then he glanced at the sign next to him. Martial Arts 1,000-story tower. The first 600 floors are placed with C-level combat skills for all major martial arts professions. Floors 601 to 300 are equipped with B-level combat skills of major martial arts professions. Floors 301 to 50 are filled with A-level combat skills from major martial arts professions. The restricted area is after the 50th floor. Sugu looked at the number of books on the first floor. He visually estimated that there were more than 1,000,000 on the first floor alone. If the number of combat skills on each floor was the same as the first floor. Sugu licked his lips. When Starry Sky Martial Arts University specially recruited him, the details he boasted were not lies. Even with his own powers, it is not easy to learn the ways of this place. Learning C-level powers now will not greatly improve my combat power. Let's go to a higher area. Sugu didn't hesitate and took the elevator directly to the 50th floor of the 1,000-story tower. The moment he stepped out of the 50th floor of the 1,000-story tower, Sugu felt his breath hitched. He felt here, feeling that every drop of blood in his veins became heavy, and the bones of his body were compressed in an extruder. On the 50th floor, a man with a handsome face and a cold temperament frowned slightly when he looked at Sugu. In the 1,000-story tower of Shinkong Martial Arts University, the gravity level will increase with each floor. Learning A-level combat skills in the uppermost area will have to withstand 30 times the gravity. Every year, some desperate people come up and are almost crippled on the spot. Not only wasting the opportunity to come in and learn, but also wasting other people's time to save people. Do I have to stop training to help get this guy to the hospital? When the man thought of this, a trace of irritation appeared on his handsome face. At this moment, blood began to flow from Sugu's pale face, and his strange expression began to return to normal. How could he adapt to an environment with 30 times gravity so quickly? The expression on the handsome man's face was a little surprised. He watched Sugu's frowning eyebrows relax slightly. Not bad, it seems like I won't waste my time. Sugu curled his lips aside. He didn't expect that Shinkong Martial Arts University would have such high requirements for students' personal qualities. Not only is it required to wear a gravity bracelet to enter the 1,000-story tower, but there is also a gravity device on the upper floors. Under the superposition of double gravity, even Sugu took a little more time to adapt before he could move in this space. Fang Yan. At this moment, the handsome man raised his chin towards Sugu. Saying your name is like saying hello. Sugu was stunned for a moment when he heard the other party's voice, and then smiled. Sugu. After Fang Yan glanced at Suji Yu, he turned his attention back to the combat skills he was learning. It seemed that the greeting he had just exchanged with Suji Yu had consumed all his interest. Suji Yu smiled, and he didn't care about the other party's arrogant attitude. This is a place for cultivation, not a social place. Who has time to care about others? After adapting to the gravity of the 50th floor of the 1,000-layer pagoda, Suji Yu slightly stretched his muscles and bones, and he sighed slightly in his heart. It's so heavy, it feels like a mountain is pressing on my head. After confirming that there was no abnormality in his body, Suji Yu and Fang Yan crossed paths, and he walked quickly to a bookshelf of combat skills books. Suji Yu casually took a combat skill in his hand and read it carefully. When he read the combat skill carefully, he closed the book. His mind began to simulate this combat skill and how he would use it. Combined with his breathing, the proficiency of this combat skill in his mind began to rise rapidly. Complete one breath A-level combat skill. Masters self-cultivation, experience plus 13. Current combat skill proficiency is a glimpse of the way. Complete one breath A-level combat skill. Masters self-cultivation, experience plus 3-4. Current combat skill proficiency is a glimpse of the way. Complete one breath A-level combat skill. Masters self-cultivation, experience plus 1-1. Current combat skill proficiency is a little success. When the proficiency is raised to a little success by Sugu's ability, the experience value gained from each breath begins to decrease. After all, it is an A-level combat skill. It takes some opportunities to master it perfectly. Just like when I fought with the alien race in the starry sky during the martial arts exam to break through the lion roar 10,000 tiger sword. Suji Yu chuckled. Although it took 15 minutes to raise the proficiency of a combat skill to a little success, Suji Yu was already very satisfied. You have to know that this is an A-level combat skill. If the proficiency is high enough, it is a killer even in the Zunwo realm. During the martial arts exam, Suji Yu was able to kill the alien race across the starry sky with the lion roar 10,000 tiger sword. And Suji Yu looked at the number of A-level combat skills stored in front of him, which were as numerous as stars, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The quality is not enough, I will make up for it with quantity first. Try to learn as much as possible first, and then slowly improve it with hard work. Anyway, with my special ability, the combat skills in my hands will always have a transformation. My personal ability will definitely have an all-round leap here. Su Ji-yu took out another combat skill at random. Complete a breath A-level combat skill. Pulse diagnosis experience plus 2-3, current proficiency is slightly accomplished. Complete a breath A-level step. Variable frequency step experience plus 3-1, current proficiency is slightly accomplished. Complete a breath. I don't know how many combat skill books I have read. Su Ji-yu rubbed his sore eyes and stretched. It just so happens that there is a practical area on each floor for students to practice what they have learned. Let's go there and take a look. When Su Ji-yu got up from the ground, he looked at the area where he had just sat and frowned slightly. There was a pit where he had just sat. Su Ji-yu shook his shoulders. I don't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that the gravity multiplier nearby began to increase again. A trace of doubt flashed in his mind, but Su Ji-yu ignored it. Anyway, he had adapted to this environment. The most urgent thing now is to practice. Su Ji-yu walked quickly towards the central practical training area, but as soon as he arrived at that area, he saw a figure. Su Ji-yu was a little surprised. He really didn't expect to see Fang Yan again here. Although they were on the same floor, the space of each floor of the 1,000-layer tower was comparable to that of a large national gymnasium. In addition, the bookshelves for the combat skills were stacked and intertwined, making the place look like a maze. It was a kind of fate that the two could meet again here. Fang Yan glanced at Su Ji-yu lightly and ignored him. Then, in front of Su Ji-yu, he began to practice several combat skills he had selected. Su Ji-yu took a look at the other party's practice and shook his head slightly. Although he only glanced at it, he could see that Fang Yan only memorized the movements of the combat skill in his hand and then reluctantly performed it. It only had the form, not the meaning. Fang Yan noticed Su Gu's gaze and snorted coldly. Obviously, the feeling of being watched by others when practicing combat skills made him quite unhappy. How dare you, a person who almost suffocated when entering the gravity zone, point fingers at me? Feeling the other party's unhappiness, Su Ji-yu shrugged his shoulders and then found another place to practice without caring. Frequency variable step was casually swayed from Su Gu's feet. Originally, the combat skills that were only practiced in his mind were now performed with his own body, which made Su Ji-yu feel a little refreshed. But soon he noticed something strange, because the extremely strong gravity on his body caused Su Gu's body to always feel sluggish when completing the actions instructed by his brain. In such an environment, every step that Su Ji-yu took did not meet the standard in his mind. How to maintain combat power in such an environment? How to connect the combat skills that he had just learned and integrate them into his own combat system? When Su Ji-yu kept thinking about these questions, he entered a state of selfless flow. Fang Yan, who was practicing by himself on the side, had stopped practicing without knowing it. He looked at Su Gu, his pupils contracted slightly. He was obviously learning A-level combat skills at the same time, and he even started earlier. Why was this guy named Su Gu so much more proficient than him? He even felt that the combat skills Su Gu was using had reached the level of proficiency that could only be glimpsed. Having achieved this level of A-level combat skills, they can already be used in actual combat. Is it possible that the combat skills this person is practicing now are not actually the ones he just learned? But it's because you've always been able to do it, and now you're showing off in front of yourself. Fang Yan couldn't help but think so. But soon, he gave up this speculation. Because of Su Gu's state, he was so focused on the horror of martial arts that even when he stopped practicing and stared at him, he failed to notice it, or it could be said that he noticed it and ignored it subconsciously. Fang Yan only occasionally entered this state of practice. When he thought back on it at that time, he just felt that time passed so quickly, and he had no time to think about trivial matters other than martial arts. Being able to enter this kind of cultivation state under high gravity, Starry Sky Martial Arts University is really a crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Fang Yan said to himself, it seems that I have underestimated the heroes of the world. He couldn't help but compare himself with Sugu to see who was stronger. Obviously what the opponent is doing now is integrating the newly mastered combat skills into his own combat system. What a terrifying talent, Fang Yan sighed, but at the same time, Sugu felt obvious dizziness after entering the high-gravity area. Obviously, I had the upper hand in terms of physical strength. I don't know what his superpower is. While Fang Yan was thinking, Sugu finished practicing the variable frequency step. Practicing combat skills in the gravity zone is much more tiring than normal. Sugu gasped slightly and said, but in this environment, the experience increase every second is more than under normal circumstances. It seems that practicing under high gravity can suppress the potential of oneself and supernatural powers. After writing this down, Sugu prepared to practice the next combat skill. At this moment, a round black shadow was thrown in his direction. Sugu subconsciously caught the thing and took a closer look to see that it was a military green kettle. He looked puzzled at Fang Yan, who threw him a kettle, and the other person smiled peacefully at him, no longer as arrogant as when they first met. I've been practicing for so long. Let's take a sip of water. Let's get to know each other again. My name is Fang Yan. Chapter 51. Sugu took the kettle thrown by the other party without any pretense and took a big gulp down his throat. He was not used to practicing under high gravity yet. He was feeling a little tired at this moment, and his body was already sending out signals that it was craving water. Fang Yan threw the kettle at the perfect time. After taking a sip of water, Sugu felt that the water he swallowed turned into energy and surged towards his limbs and bones. Not only does it quench your thirst, it also removes fatigue and energy from your body. This was no ordinary water. Sugu's eyes widened and he was slightly surprised. Fang Yan looked at him and said with a smile, "This is regenerating water, which can help people quickly replenish their physical energy. It is the latest martial arts technology product, and it has not yet been mass-produced. It takes some credits in school to get it." Quote, "Thank you," Sugu said to Fang Yan, "this thing has helped me a lot." He looked at the kettle in his hand. He didn't expect that water could have so many ways. Sure enough, he still had to go out to broaden his horizons. A pot of water seemed to bring the two people closer. Fang Yan walked towards Sugu and looked at the other person curiously. "I don't know about continuous Sheng Shui. It seems that he is not from a noble family, but a commoner. And he should be a freshman just like himself. But in just 3 hours, he was able to master an A-level pace like this. This kind of talent puts even Fang Yan to shame. Student Sugu, I would like to ask, what is your power rating?" Fang Yan looked at Sugu and asked seriously. He was comparing Sugu to himself. Although I really don't want to admit it, the opponent's understanding of combat skills may indeed be a little higher than mine. But in terms of adaptation to the high gravity zone and physical ability, he should be stronger than Sugu. To determine the winner, you should look at superpowers. It would be a bit impolite to directly ask the other person what his superpower is, so Fang Yan chose to make innuendos. Sugu listened to the other party's question and didn't pay attention. He smiled and said casually, "My superpower is an inferior superpower and has no rating. Because of this in high school, I was assigned to the liberal arts class and was prevented from pursuing the path of martial arts." Fang Yan was slightly stunned after hearing Sugu's experience. For a moment, he thought it was a joke made by Sugu because he didn't want others to pry into his privacy. But looking at the helplessness in the other person's eyes, Fang Yan understood that this was true. Superpowers are not the entire criterion for judging a warrior. Student Sugu, you are able to dominate the school with your talent in combat skills. There should not be many people in the same grade who are your opponents. You can compete for the top 2 in the freshman competition in a month's time. Fang Yan immediately comforted Sugu Dao. Although she accidentally uncovered the other person's scar, she still couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. "If I can compete for the top 2, of course I am the first. 3-1, I am winning." Sugu waved his hand nonchalantly, and then returned the kettle to the other party. "Thank you for the regeneration water. I'm not used to the gravity here yet, so this thing has helped me a lot." Fang Yan nodded and resumed his nonchalant attitude again. Although 30 times the gravity is quite terrifying, staying here still requires replenishing the replenishing water, which means Sugu is destined not to be a threat to himself. Fang Yan's interest in it suddenly dropped greatly. He stretched out his hand to take the kettle from Sugu. But the moment his fingers grasped the kettle, a heavy pressure like a mountain suddenly hit Fang Yan, and his entire face suddenly turned extremely pale. At that moment, Fang Yan felt his blood suddenly flowing backwards, his internal organs seemed to be grabbed by evil spirits, and they were being pulled madly towards hell, and the bones in his body let out moans. Ah! He let out a scream, his whole vision went dark, and his body couldn't help but fall to the ground. Fang Yan, what's wrong with you? Sugu was stunned, not understanding what happened. Just when Fang Yan was about to fall to the ground, he suddenly opened his eyes, and then put his elbows on the ground. Although he didn't fall down, big drops of sweat dripped from his head, and his whole body seemed to be fished out of the water. What just happened to Fang Yan? Sugu wanted to help him up. Don't come over. Fang Yan seemed to have exhausted his last strength and shouted at Sugu. Sugu paused and took a few steps back. He also realized that the problem just now might be his own. When I touched the kettle just now, I felt a terrifying force of gravity. There must be something wrong with the gravity field on your body, and it spread to me after we came into contact. What's going on with the gravity field on your body? Why does your body bear so much higher gravity than mine in the same space? Fang Yan slowly stood up from the ground, and the heavy pressure just now made him still have lingering fears. If Sugu had come to help him just now, he might have died. Sugu frowned and slowly pulled out the gravity bracelet from his sleeve. Then he turned out the display screen of the bracelet. He had been practicing and didn't pay attention. The number on the bracelet jumped from the 5 he said at the beginning to 20. So the school doesn't actually have a rule that you must wear a gravity bracelet when entering the 1,000-layered tower. Sugu's voice had a rare coldness. How could there be such a stupid rule? Fang Yan looked at Su Ji-yu, and the number 20 on his gravity bracelet, as if he was looking at a monster. So you have been practicing in a gravity field that is 20 times stronger than mine, and you were just doing the A-level combat skill variable frequency step, and your movements have not been deformed. What kind of monster is this? At this moment, Su Ji-yu understood a lot of things in an instant. He recalled the appearance of the 2 people who blocked him at the entrance of the 1,000-layer pagoda, and then a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He doesn't like to cause trouble, but he is not afraid of it. Since someone has provoked him, Su Ji-yu doesn't mind giving the other party an unforgettable lesson. After Fang Yan got up, he immediately distanced himself from Su Ji-yu, not wanting to have any physical contact with him. He even didn't want the pot of reboiled water in Sugu's hand, and he was traumatized by it. The feeling just now almost made him see the scene of hell, and he really didn't want to experience it a second time. Su Ji-yu looked at Fang Yan's appearance, feeling a little sorry. He felt quite sorry for Fang Yan. He had the good intention to refill his water, but he almost got himself killed. Su Ji-yu scratched his head, hesitated for a moment and said, "When you were practicing the fighting skill just now, you should have a feeling of stagnation when you mobilize the muscles of your left leg." I was right. After hearing this, Fang Yan looked at Su Ji-yu with a somewhat ugly look. Anyone who directly pointed out the flaws of his moves would not be in a good mood, not to mention that Fang Yan had just suffered a big loss from Su Ji-yu and had a very bad impression of him. Before Fang Yan got angry, Su Ji-yu continued, "You can lower your body's center of gravity by 2 centimeters in advance when doing that action, so that you can eliminate that stagnation." This was Sugu's way of expressing his apology. He had no money or things to apologize to Fang Yan, so he simply helped him make up for the gaps in the fighting skills just now. It was also his little thought. Fang Yan frowned even deeper. Generally, those who are qualified to instruct others in the practice of combat skills are either more proficient in the same combat skills than those being instructed, or even the founder of the combat skills. Su Ji-yu naturally could not meet this requirement. Each combat skill in the 1,000-layer pagoda is unique, and this combat skill was just in Fang Yan's hands, and he was practicing it. Then there is only one other possibility, that the instructor's overall vision of the martial arts path is far greater than that of the instructor. Fang Yan looked at Su Ji-yu and felt an unspeakable anger. "You and I are both freshmen, how can you be qualified to instruct me? Try it, I'll apologize if it doesn't work." Seeing through Fang Yan's thoughts, Su Ji-yu comforted him. Fang Yan took a deep breath and suppressed his unhappiness. He followed Sugu's words and began to practice the combat skill just now. When he used the strength of his left leg, he lowered his center of gravity as Suji said, and then something incredible happened. That sense of stagnation really disappeared. Even the movements of the entire move became more fluent. Only Fang Yan, who is a combat skill user, knows how big the gap is. If Suji hadn't awakened him, he didn't know how long he would have to figure it out on his own. After completing a set of combat skills, Fang Yan asked with some trembling, "Su. Brother Su, how did you figure it out? As long as you know more combat skills, you can naturally apply them to other situations." Suji replied with a smile. Fang Yan was silent. More. How many more combat skills are there? Fang Yan looked at Suji and felt a little numb now. With physical talent, the other party can practice under 50 times gravity. With combat skill talent, he can even press and rub himself. Maybe his only ability is indeed a little stronger than the other party. When the sun sets and the moon rises, Fang Yan slowly walks down from the high gravity area. Although the school gives students only 1 day to practice, I have never heard of anyone who can stay in the high gravity area and practice uninterruptedly. For Fang Yan, practicing for 10 consecutive hours under 30 times the gravity has reached his limit. At this moment, he raised his head and seemed to be looking through the ceiling at the area where he had just practiced. A look of awe flashed across his face. Sugu is still reading about combat skills and still practicing. The two of them were obviously about the same age, but the gap was so big. Fang Yan never compared himself with Sugu again. Some are just a kind of reverence as if they are treating the elders of the clan. This was the first time Fang Yan had such emotions among his peers. Under Sugu's guidance, he mastered 1 more A-level combat skills than originally planned. Originally, he wanted to reciprocate the favor and use his superpower to help Sugu remove the gravity bracelet from his hand. But he was declined by Sugu. The reason is that with this, you can better stimulate your potential. That's 20 times the gravity, plus the 1,000-story tower's own gravity field, it's 50 times the gravity. Sugu didn't look relaxed when he spoke. 50 times the gravity was still a big burden even for a monster like him. But Fang Yan could never forget the sincerity towards martial arts in his eyes. It was painful to be tortured by gravity, but Sugu enjoyed it. "Don't leave yet, wait for him." Fang Yan stopped in the low gravity area and waited silently, like a guard guarding the king. The moon sets and the sun rises, and unknowingly another day of reincarnation has passed. Snapped. "Ha!" Sugu screamed in surprise. The text on the combat skills book he was flipping through suddenly disappeared. He glanced at the electronic clock hanging in the gravity room and realized that 24 hours had passed. Sugu flipped through the book in his hand again, and then took out other combat skills on the bookshelf and looked through them, confirming that they had all turned into blank sheets of paper. It was as if a night of study and practice was just a big dream. Sugu said reluctantly, "That's all, I have to stay in this school for 4 years anyway. There will be many opportunities to join in the future." Sugu stood up from the chair. His skin had begun to bleed from the long-term heavy pressure. The white military uniform he was wearing was dyed in clusters of red, as if plum blossoms were blooming from his body. "I still don't practice enough." Sugu looked at the blood stains on his clothes and said calmly. Then we walked down from the 1,000 layers tower, from the high power area to the low power area. Brother Su. When he saw Sugu coming downstairs after finishing his practice, Fang Yan, who had been waiting, greeted him respectfully. He looked at Sugu with awe. The other party actually practiced for a whole day under 50 times the gravity. He hasn't left yet. Sugu glanced at Fang Yan in surprise. He thought he had already returned to the dormitory. "Waiting for you, Brother Su. Give me the bracelet and I'll take it off for you." Sugu didn't refuse this time, he stretched out his hands. Fang Yan stretched out a finger, and 2 strong winds in opposite directions swirled and rubbed against his fingertip area, creating thunder and lightning. The 2 forces of wind and thunder were perfectly controlled by him. He slashed towards Sugu's gravity bracelet in the air, and the bracelet snapped. The level of superpower development is very high. After the gravity bracelet broke, Sugu felt his body became lighter, and even his breathing felt much more comfortable. He stretched his muscles and praised Fang Yan. This was the first time he had seen someone develop other attributes of a single attribute superpower. After receiving Sugu's affirmation, Fang Yan looked a little proud and said, "Brother Su, should we take a rest or go out directly?" Sugu felt the fatigue of his body and said with a wry smile, "It's better to take a rest first." While Sugu was resting, 3 students, wearing the same style of black clothes, walked on the floating board towards the 1,000-story martial arts pagoda. That black suit is the uniform of the Star Martial Arts University Student Union. They are all members of the student union. Among the 3 people, the one walking behind complained to the person in the middle. "Vice Chairman, there is still 1 week until the official start of school. Why are we running to the 1,000th-floor tower?" Faced with the complaints from his subordinates, Yu Kunshao, the vice chairman of the student union, scratched his head and said helplessly, "This year, there are 2 specially recruited freshmen. We made an exception and allowed them to enter the 1,000th-story tower to practice in advance. But those 2 are freshmen after all. When they come out of the gravity zone of the 1,000th-story tower for the first time, their bodies will definitely feel extremely uncomfortable. The 3 of us are going to take a look to avoid any accidents." After listening to the chairman's words, the 2 of them nodded suddenly, then clicked their tongues. 2 freshmen. There are actually 2 freshmen who can be treated so unusually by the school. It seems that the number of students this year is very good. After hearing this, Yu Kunshao also sighed with emotion. Indeed, one of the 2 is called Sugu. He has no power and is just an ordinary civilian. During the martial arts test, I crossed a large realm and killed a warrior-level alien. This record is better than what I had back then. After hearing this, the 2 people behind them clucked their tongues. Those who can kill enemies across realms, no matter how they do it, are worthy of being called a genius. What about the other person? Chairman, please don't keep us in suspense. The 2 immediately urged the vice chairman to continue. Yu Kunshao's expression was a little uncomfortable. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "There is another person named Fang Yan, who is the heir of the Fang family." Fang family. After hearing this, the expressions on the faces of the 2 changed. This is a big family with a long history. It stands to reason that their disciples will not be sent to universities outside, but will stay in the family to be personally guided by the masters of the family. The heir of such a family would actually come to Starry Sky Martial Arts University. It is rumored that this family has had some changes recently. Yu Kunshao said lightly. One of these 2 people represents the common people, and the other represents the aristocratic family. They are considered the 2 most promising newcomers in the school this year. This year's freshman competition may be a clash between these 2 people. At this point, Yu Kunshao's face was a little angry, as if he remembered some bad memories. He gritted his teeth and said, "I hope Suji Yu can beat Fang Yan severely in the freshman competition. Isn't it just that he has a higher martial arts talent? Do you know how to behave?" The 2 people following Yu Kunshao immediately shut up. They vaguely remembered that a few weeks ago, the vice chairman went to help the school teachers with special recruitment. After returning from that time, he ran to the virtual spirit world alone to vent for a long time. It seems that the incident was related to Fang Yan. After the 3 of them, they rushed to the 1,000th-story tower in silence. And at this moment, Yu Kunshao found that several people had been waiting here early. Seeing the appearance of the 3 people, Yu Kunshao's eyes condensed and said sternly, "Zheng Lu, what are you doing here?" Zheng Lu, Qian Hao, and Li Chu stood at the entrance of the martial arts 1,000th-story tower, with relaxed expressions on their faces. After the 3 of them gave the broken gravity bracelet to Sugu, they met here to see Sugu's ugly appearance when he came out of the 1,000th-story tower. It must have been a pleasant scene. "Zheng Lu, what are you doing here?" Yu Kunshao's sharp scolding broke the leisurely and peaceful atmosphere between the 3 of them. Zheng Lu, who was called, turned his head, looked at Yu Kunshao and said with a smile, "What's wrong, Vice Chairman Yu? There are no school rules in the school. You can't take a walk near the 1,000th-story martial arts tower." The 2 stared at each other in the air, confronting each other, and the atmosphere was tense. In the past 2 years, major martial arts universities have begun to increase the number of special recruitment places for some small aristocratic families. In order to save the declining ranking of universities, Shinkong Martial Arts University had no choice but to start to follow this trend. The influx of aristocratic families further squeezed the already limited martial arts resources of the common people, and the opposition between the two classes became increasingly acute. This scene is just the tip of the iceberg. Zhenglu, please stop talking here and there. What are you doing here? As the vice president of the student union, Yu Kunshao helped the teachers in the admissions office and did some admissions reviews for disciples from aristocratic families. So he knew exactly what the Zheng family and Zhenglu were. This kind of person, with his 3 younger brothers, was staring at the school's martial arts tower. There was no way he wasn't planning something in his mind. When Zhenglu saw that the other party exposed the truth directly, he stopped pretending and said with a smile. Why are you so nervous, Chairman Yu? What bad thoughts could I have? Of course I came here to see the champion from the same province as me. I've always wanted to see with my own eyes this classmate Sugu who beat me in the martial arts exam. The other party came for Suji Yu. For an instant, alarm bells rang in Yu Kunshao's heart, and his mind was racing, thinking about what the other party was going to do. You must know that the 1,000-story martial arts tower is the foundation of Starry Sky Martial Arts University. It is impossible for ordinary people to enter without the permission of the top leaders of the school. Why is he messing around? Yu Kunshao glanced at Qian Hao and Li Chu behind Zhenglu, suddenly thought of something, and the expression on his face suddenly changed. He scolded sharply. Where did you put those broken gravity bracelets? You are members of the student union, how could you do this? This will cost lives. Faced with the anger of the vice chairman of the student union, Qian Hao and Li Chu flinched, and they took a step back, not daring to say a word. At this time, Zhenglu took a step forward, blocked the 2 of them in front of him and said arrogantly. Vice Chairman Yu, why are you so angry? Of course you lost that pair of bracelets. But maybe some ignorant country bumpkin picked up the bracelet. How can Qian Hao and Li Chu be blamed for this? Yu Kunshao looked at Zhenglu's face, and his whole face turned purple with anger. When Zhenglu saw this, he still added fuel to the fire with a smile on his face and said, Vice Chairman, don't get so angry. As long as that person is not so stupid that he wears a gravity bracelet and goes to the 30x gravity zone to learn A-level combat skills, there is a high chance that he will still be alive. It's just going to be seriously injured. Yu Kunshao was almost about to fight Zhenglu on the spot, but the 2 people behind him stopped him and said, Chairman, please don't be impulsive now. Yes, the top priority now is to save people. We must first call the school infirmary, and then find a way to rescue Sugu. If you were provoked by Zhenglu and started fighting with him now, the situation would become more complicated. The other party would definitely be happy to do this. Yu Kunshao took a deep breath and forced down the anger in his heart. His 2 younger brothers were right. Although the other party's attitude is extremely arrogant, I don't have enough evidence to identify the other party. Once I take action, I will have endless arguments with the other party. Moreover, Sugu entered the 1,000-layered tower with the bracelet and has not come out for a day. It is very likely that he has been unconscious due to the strong gravity. The situation may even be worse. Now that there is no human or physical evidence, the situation is very unfavorable to him. Yu Kunshao picked up his cell phone and started to call the school infirmary. He had to put the medical equipment in place first and then save people. Zhenglu looked at Yu Kunshao who was on the phone and continued to challenge. Remember to bring more good things to save people. Maybe Sugu is inside and his brains have been squeezed out. Veins popped out in Yu Kunshao's hand holding the phone, but he ignored the other party. After properly contacting the school infirmary, Yu Kunshao looked up at the 1,000-story tower above his head with a blank expression on his face. How to get Sugu out? Without proof from the school's top brass, the 1,000-story martial arts tower was a forbidden area and he couldn't enter at all. Vice Chairman, aren't we here to pick up 2 people? There is another person inside now, why not let him help? Someone whispered into Yu Kunshao's ear. Fang Yan. Let him bring Sugu out. This is indeed a way. Although the Fang family is a martial arts family, it has always been more responsible than other families. It is also friendly to ordinary people and does not deliberately embarrass others. Their reputation is pretty good. But when he thought of the name Fang Yan, Yu Kunshao's head started to hurt. That arrogant guy will not pay attention to anyone who he thinks is of average strength. When Yu Kunshao contacted him, he was furious and almost messed up the special recruitment. To be honest, I really can't imagine that Fang Yan would spend time searching and rescuing others in the thousand-layer tower. Yu Kunshao sighed and began to look through the contact list on his phone. But now I can only try my best to see if I can contact him. Yu Kunshao recalled the first time he met Fang Yan, his extremely arrogant face, and then he asked him to help save people. He felt uncomfortable. Just when Yu Kunshao was about to make a call, there was a sound of footsteps at the exit of the thousand-layer tower. In an instant, everyone's eyes were all focused on the exit. Yu Kunshao's face suddenly turned pale. If Fang Yan came out at this time, Su Jiyu would be completely trapped in the thousand-layer tower and his life would be in danger. The expressions of Zhenglu and his three companions were exactly the opposite. The three of them did not hide their smug expressions. Although they had harmed Su Jiyu, who would know that it was them who did it as long as there was no evidence? Zhenglu almost couldn't control himself and burst into laughter. But before he could laugh, his open mouth froze there as if his jaw was dislocated, motionless. Yu Kunshao silently put away the mobile phone he had picked up, and a trace of disbelief flashed in his eyes. The snow-white martial arts uniform was stained with blood, as if a bunch of proud blood plums bloomed on the wearer. Although the face was as pale as paper, it could not hide the handsome features. Su Jiyu pushed the door out from the exit. He looked at the people gathered outside, tilted his head slightly and said, "What are you doing here?" Zhenglu stared at Su Gu's face. His clothes were obviously stained red by his own blood. Su Jiyu was injured, but the degree of injury was much lighter than he expected. This kind of minor injury would heal on its own without seeing a doctor before the freshman competition. Su Jiyu was locked up for a whole day, a full 24 hours, under the double superposition of the gravity bracelets 20 times gravity and the gravity field of the thousand-layer pagoda. According to Zhenglu's prediction, he would be seriously injured and unconscious for at least half a year, which would be enough for him to complete all the finishing work of this plan, and no one would be able to put the blame on him in the future. But now everything has changed. How could he be okay? How could he be okay? And the expressions on the faces of Qian Hao and Li Chu behind Zhenglu also turned pale. This is different from the plan. If they are identified by Su Jiyu, they will be expelled from school. Yu Kunshao saw that Su Jiyu was okay and breathed a sigh of relief. Only suffering this degree of minor injuries, it was much better than the best-case scenario he had considered. But now he was also very curious about how Su Jiyu got out. Soon, everyone got the answer. After Su Jiyu pushed the door and walked out, Fang Yan also stepped out of the thousand-layer tower. He stood half a step behind Su Jiyu, holding the gravity bracelet that he had destroyed with his supernatural power. It seems that Su Jiyu was rescued by Fang Yan. Looking at Fang Yan beside Su Jiyu, some people hated him, while others breathed a sigh of relief. Yu Kunshao. Great, fortunately nothing happened. Zhenglu. How could he be so lucky? Su Jiyu didn't know that these people had done so many psychological activities after he came out. After his eyes swept over the faces of these 6 people, he instantly noticed Qian Hao and Li Chu. Su Gu's eyes condensed instantly, and everyone present felt a strong sense of oppression. The weak-looking boy who had just walked out of the thousand-layer tower seemed to have become a demon that wanted to devour people in an instant. Although the gravity bracelet that the two tricked Su Jiyu into wearing did not cause any harm to him. But this behavior contains the maliciousness of a venomous snake. Su Jiyu is a person who can talk to anyone with a smile, but even a clay man can still be angry. The other party wants his life, so Su Jiyu will naturally not hide his murderous intentions towards these people. This is all a misunderstanding. Qian Hao and Li Chu are the 6 people who are most directly facing the pressure from Su Jiyu. The two feel as if there is an evil ghost sucking their throats at this moment. Even though it is obvious that Su Jiyu is weak now, even if they are 3-1 standing behind Zhenglu, the two do not feel safe at this moment. They want to escape, but they are so scared that they dare not move. Student Su Jiyu, these 2 people have some relationship with my Zheng family. Is there anything that cannot be resolved between classmates? I am willing to pay some price to resolve the grievances between us. At this time, Zhenglu stood up and stood in front of the two to confront Su Jiyu. After all, these 2 people are the younger brothers who have just come to school and have just been recruited. If the two of them were finished like this, how could he survive? And Zheng Lu knew that Su Jiyu was just an ordinary civilian, without any power behind him. How to deal with these ordinary people? The Zheng family has been dealing with them many times and they are almost proficient. If they are given a little benefit, these civilians will forget the unpleasantness imposed on them. And just as he finished speaking, Su Jiyu seemed to have really restrained his murderous aura. Seeing the other party's concession, Zheng Lu's face was a little proud. This kid is quite sensible. And just when Zheng Lu relaxed for a moment, he heard two miserable screams. Su Jiyu had appeared behind him, and Qian Hao and Li Chu had fallen to the ground, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. This is instant step. Yu Kunshao, who had been watching from the side, suddenly contracted his pupils. It was obviously only a C-level combat skill, but the speed was so fast that he, a bystander, could hardly keep up. Moreover, the timing of the attack was ruthless and decisive. The moment Zheng Lu relaxed after the murderous aura disappeared, he completed the double kill. This level is only achieved by a few special recruits in the Assassin Academy. Now Su Jiyu is still injured. Su Jiyu. Zheng Lu roared and took out the brass knuckles he carried with him. In front of him, he made his people live or die. This is not only beating his people, but also slapping him in the face. Facing Zheng Lu's anger, Su Gu's face was still calm. At this time, Fang Yan snorted coldly and stood in front of Su Jiyu. Brother Su is injured. If you really want to play, I will play with you. Seeing Fang Yan beside Su Jiyu, Zheng Lu's pupils shrank suddenly, and then the anger in his heart rose even more. Last time it was Zhou Zhengsheng from the army, this time it was the young master of the Feng family. Why is this Su Jiyu so lucky, and there are always people willing to protect him? This Feng Yan is a good person. He helps others when he sees them in trouble. A younger brother beside Yu Kunshao whispered. Yu Kunshao was also confused when he saw this. Feng Yan was not like this the last time he saw him. Why did he change his personality now? But he couldn't think about it now. As a student union, they couldn't just watch two groups of students start fighting in front of them. Yu Kunshao looked at Qian Hao and Li Chu who were lying on the ground, their lives unknown. The most urgent task now was to stop the situation from getting worse. In the tense atmosphere of the three-way confrontation, a loud whistle of a medical vehicle sounded. A white medical-specific suspension vehicle quickly landed in the middle of the three-way confrontation from a high altitude, and a group of angels in white swarmed out of the medical vehicle like well-trained soldiers. Where is Su Jiyu? Where is the student named Su Jiyu? And who called for help? An anxious nurse stood in the middle of the three and shouted loudly. Hearing the shouts of the medical staff, Su Jiyu just wanted to raise his hand, but was immediately interrupted by the anxious voices of several other doctors. Do we still need to find Su Jiyu? Aren't there two lying here? Isn't Su Jiyu alone? Who cares? One of the two is right. Send the two to the car first. A group of medical staff passed through the three people in confrontation and lifted Li Chu and Qian Hao onto the medical vehicle. Students nowadays really have no sense of propriety. Even if these two people can be cured, they are probably only conscious vegetative people. A medical staff member checked the injuries of the two people and complained. The three opposing forces watched the medical staff operate silently. Zheng Lu put away his brass knuckles and looked at his two younger brothers who were carried to the ambulance. Fang Yan also took back his supernatural power. Su Jiyu yawned. He was a little sleepy. The tense atmosphere dissipated a lot in a moment. Boss is wise. He called an ambulance in advance to stop the two groups from fighting. Otherwise, we might not be able to pull them apart. The member of the student union poked Yu Kunshao with his elbow and flattered him. Yu Kunshao listened to his younger brother's praise and touched his head. Did he call the ambulance for this? Something seems wrong. Forget it, who cares, anyway, the goal is achieved. Zheng Lu took the school infirmary's car and left the martial arts Thousand Layers Tower area. Before leaving, he glared at Su Jiyu fiercely. This feud was completely settled. From now on, he and Su Jiyu would fight to the death. But Su Jiyu ignored Zheng Lu at all. His eyes were once again fixed on the location of the martial arts Thousand Layers Tower, his eyes deep. Congratulations to the two students for coming out of the 1,000-story martial arts tower. I believe you both have found the combat skills you need here. Seeing that the trouble had completely disappeared, Yu Kunshao immediately walked towards Sugu and Fang Yan. He tried his best to greet these two people in the most cordial tone. Then he looked at Sugu and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, classmate Sugu, these two scum appeared in our student union, and they almost caused a big accident for you. You don't have to worry about Li Chu and Qian Hao, we will handle it properly." Su Ji Yu turned his head, looked at Yu Kunshao's sincere expression, and asked with some confusion, "Excuse me, who are you?" The expression on Yu Kunshao's face froze, and he looked at Fang Yan next to him and winked a few times. "Seeing that you are so familiar with Sugu, please introduce me to me." Fang Yan glanced at it, then looked at Sugu and said, "This is my defeated man, the one I beat up a few weeks ago." "I don't remember the rest very clearly." Yu Kunshao's fist hardened. "I just thought this kid had changed his gender. I really had my brain kicked by a donkey to have such an idea." "Fang Yan, you still have to remember the other person's name in the future, otherwise it will be too rude." Sugu said helplessly, "Yes, what Brother Su taught me is that I will pay attention to it in the future." Fang Yan said respectfully. Seeing the completely different attitudes between them, Yu Kunshao felt that his mind could not turn around, and an inexplicable grievance spurted out from the bottom of his heart, which he could not suppress. "Why, is it just because Sugu is handsomer than me? This is Yu Kunshao, the vice chairman of our student union. Because the school is worried that the two of them may not be able to adapt to the gravity of the 1,000-layered tower for the first time and have an accident, they sent us to look after the two special admissions students." The student council members wearing the same clothes on the side kindly helped explain. "Nice to meet you." Sugu showed a warm smile and shook hands with the other party. Feeling Sugu's polite attitude, Yu Kunshao's mood improved slightly, and the two began to walk and chat. Yu Kunshao told Su Ji Yu all he knew about the school rules and disciplines that needed to be basically followed in the school, as well as some information about the instructors. Sugu responded with a smile and expressed his respect and gratitude to the other party. The two had a great conversation. During this period, Fang Yan felt a little bored after listening, said hello and went back first, leaving Sugu alone to walk around the campus with these student union members. When Yu Kunshao noticed that Sugu's eyes were always looking in the direction of the martial arts 1,000-story tower intentionally or unintentionally, the expression on his face was somewhat pity. Although Sugu seemed to be alive now, his breath was extremely weak. To torture such a powerful warrior like this, it is hard to imagine how painful and helpless he must have been in the 1,000-layered tower of martial arts. Seeing if he has to look there, there is probably a shadow in his heart. Yu Kunshao said, "Classmate Su Ji Yu, do you need me to call a psychiatrist for you?" After hearing what the other party said, Sugu looked at the other party's worried face and immediately understood what he was thinking. So he waved his hand and said, "No, I'm mentally healthy." Then he was afraid that the other party wouldn't believe it, so he added, "I looked at the 1,000-story tower just to express my gratitude for the deep reserve of combat skills inside. I practiced hard here all night, and I didn't even finish learning the combat skills I wanted to learn. I still have to keep working hard." With Sugu's superpower, he studied hard all night on the top floor of the 1,000-story tower, but he didn't even finish learning the combat skills on the top floor. One can imagine the horror of the books inside. This further stimulated Sugu's desire for knowledge. He was already thinking about how to enter here again to study. After hearing this, Yu Kunshao frowned. "Didn't you even learn combat skills overnight? With the talent shown by Sugu, it shouldn't be." Then he remembered something and cursed in his mind. Looking at Sugu's current injuries, it is naturally impossible to go to the high-gravity area where A-level combat skills are stored. Otherwise, under the superposition of that kind of power, he would have been crushed into minced meat. But from Sugu's perspective, the only way for him to quickly improve his martial arts strength is to quickly master A-level combat skills. And it is impossible for the school to open the 1,000-layer tower again for Sugu because he failed to master A-level combat skills. It is tantamount to saying that one of his opportunities to obtain the first prize in martial arts was ruined by that villain Zheng Lu. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt sympathy for Sugu. It was not easy. It is really difficult for those of us who were born as civilians to climb up. Yu Kunshao patted Su-gu's shoulder hard, and then said sincerely. Junior, don't worry, it's okay even if you haven't learned the skills you like. You have to stay in this school for 4 more years. As long as you can achieve good results in school, the martial arts 1000-layer tower will definitely be open to you again. Quote. Thank you, senior, for your encouragement. Su-gu's eyes flashed with light. I think so too. I will definitely come here again. Feeling that Su-ji-yu was not affected by this incident, Yu Kunshao felt relieved. After thinking about it, he took out a USB flash drive from his pocket and handed it to Su-gu, and then said, here is another condition for the school to recruit you. You can choose any method in the school as your practice method. This USB flash drive contains information about the characteristics of the exercises that the school can provide to you. It does not include the content of the exercises. You have already entered the realm of seeking me, and you can choose a technique that suits you, and transform the soul power cultivated by the transitional technique, Tianyuan Gong, into the soul power of the real main technique. Fortunately, although the power of Tianyuan Gong is weak, it is moderate and peaceful, and there will be no loss during the transformation, and it will not cause damage to the body. Su-ji-yu used the projection computer he carried with him to scan the information in the USB flash drive. Countless complex techniques were sorted out according to various martial arts professions. Among them, a whole page was recommended, and the techniques analyzed by the school teachers were more suitable for Su-ji-yu. It can be said that he was very attentive. Then I will accept it. Thank you, Vice Chairman. Su-ji-yu said after hesitating for a moment. He didn't want to expose the fact that he was transforming Tianyuan Gong yet, so he could only accept this good intention. It's what you should have. Yu Kunshao said, I suggest that in addition to the skills recommended by the teacher, you should focus on the skills related to assassins. I think you are very talented in the way of assassins. Thinking about the other party's crippling of his younger brother's move in front of Zheng Lu, Yu Kunshao still feels amazed. Of course, if you have any questions when choosing a skill, you can always come to the school's instructor to ask. They will definitely answer any of your questions carefully. Su-ji-yu smiled and responded to all the other party's careful instructions. At this moment, he was thinking about the matter of skill transformation, how to cover it up. Yu Kunshao continued. Su-ji-yu, you have the best martial arts test record among all the civilian students we recruited. Many civilian-born instructors have high hopes for you. You must win the freshman competition in a month and get a good ranking. Let us civilians also breathe a sigh of relief in front of the aristocratic families. About the struggle between civilians and aristocratic families, Yu Kunshao also popularized a lot to Su-ji-yu just now. After hearing this, Su-ji-yu smiled bitterly. Although he could not get along with the noble families, he did not want to be pushed to the front by the common people as a flag bearer. The principal is also there for the freshman competition. If you perform well enough there and attract the attention of those senior officials, you can make some small requests. Maybe you can enter the 1000 Layers Martial Arts Tower to study again. Su-ji-yu looked at Yu Kunshao with a serious face and said, Chairman Yu, please tell me all the information about the freshman competition in detail. Su-ji-yu will definitely live up to your expectations. Coming out of the 1000 Layers Martial Arts Tower, 1 week later. Su-ji-yu stood in the center of the underground training room of the dormitory with a dagger. Under his feet were the 2000 armored flesh steaks that he had just chopped off. Su-ji-yu glanced at his killing efficiency displayed on the screen and made a dissatisfied tisk. Although he had been resting for a week, the internal injuries suffered under high gravity still had some impact on him. Fortunately, in the first week of school, most freshmen will choose this time to break through the realm. The teachers in the school have been transferred to protect the students, and the freshman year is almost suspended. Otherwise, I might be forced to skip classes on the first day of school. Su-ji-yu said softly. Now the freshman year of Starry Sky Martial Arts University has started, but the difference between martial arts university and ordinary universities is that the breakthrough of students' realm is the top priority. Most of the freshmen who just started school will choose to take out a credit loan to directly purchase the realm-breaking skills after they enter school. Therefore, the teachers in the school will be extremely busy in the first week of school. Generally speaking, classes will be suspended in the first week of freshmen. And Su Ji-yu had broken through the realm early, so he was relatively free to stay in the dormitory. After stopping today's practice, Su Ji-yu returned to the living room upstairs from the practice room in the basement. He, this ID called Crazy Wolf is really stupid. As soon as he came to the ground from the basement, he heard Momingji, who was sitting on the sofa, making a strange laugh. Because the student dormitory of Shinkongwuda is too big, a single person is a 3-story villa. Although there is no worry about food and drink, it is inevitable that living alone will feel bored, so many students will spontaneously form multi-person dormitories. Momingji and Su Ji-yu are in this situation. The two have been living in a dormitory since Jia Sanli put them down from the suspension car. Unlike Su Ji-yu, who had already broken through the realm, the little fat man was still far from breaking through the realm. He had nothing to do at this time of school, so he simply took care of the website every day. He used the permission of the founder of his website to get dozens of accounts to chat on the website of the God of War, so as to ensure the activity of the website's Almighty God of War discussion area. Each account, whether it is to lead the rhythm or answer questions, each account has its own mission. Although Mr. Ma can pay someone to do this, he chooses to do it himself. He seems to have gained a different kind of happiness in this matter, and can find fun in front of the computer every day. Brother Su, you have finished practicing, you still need to combine work and rest, your injury is not healed yet. Hearing the sound of Su Ji-yu coming up from the ground, Momingji looked back at him and said. Not bad, Su Ji-yu said. I haven't exercised for a long time, and my hands are itchy. I'll go to the martial arts dojo in the virtual spirit world later, and you should also get ready quickly. This is an agreement between the two. Every time Su Ji-yu enters the virtual spirit world as the Almighty God of War, he must notify Momingji. He wanted to shoot the scene in the best view of the audience and broadcast it live in the House of Martial God. Momingji scratched his head after hearing what Su Ji-yu said. Brother Su, why don't you rest for a few more days? You haven't recovered from your injury yet. The state of consciousness in the virtual spirit world is a complete reflection of the physical state. It's too bad for you to fight to the death in the martial arts arena now. Facing the dissuasion of his good brother, Su Ji-yu just smiled and said. No need. While speaking, he had already picked up his X device. Momingji shrugged when he saw this. He knew that he couldn't persuade Su Ji-yu anyway, so he simply took out his X device. The two entered the virtual spirit world again. When Su Ji-yu appeared with the ID of the Almighty Martial God, the fans of the House of Martial God who paid special attention to the ID of the Almighty Martial God immediately received the news. And they made the same choice without any prior agreement. Brother Wushan is finally here. Brother, hurry up and log in. Here I am. After watching so many videos of the martial arts arena, Brother Wushan's is still the most effective. I want to see if he can get random weapons again today. Hurry up and grab a spot. Now the Almighty Martial God is no longer an unknown person. If we are late, we will not be able to go to the scene and can only watch the live broadcast. In an instant, all the people who followed the Almighty Martial God swarmed in. Some were fans, and most were here for fun. That Almighty Martial God is finally online. Moon, Stark Family University Training Room. Anderson looked at the message that popped up on his phone, his eyes were red. After he was defeated by the Almighty Martial God, he wanted to fight him again all the time. If he fought again, he would definitely use his specialized weapon and fight with all his strength from the beginning. But when he sent a challenge letter to the Almighty Martial God's email, the other party ignored it and the letter remained unread. He thought about adding a friend first, but the friend request he sent also fell into the sea. The other party seemed to have lost interest in him. The Stark family had never been wronged like this before, and Anderson immediately vowed to get back at them. Only by knowing yourself and the enemy can you win every battle. In order to learn more about the Almighty God of War, he went to the website that he thought was extremely stupid and registered an ID called Crazy Wolf. As a result, there are dozens of big water fools posting spam messages in the discussion area of that garbage website every day. If that were all, there are still people who keep chatting with him privately to tease him. Seeing the mean tone when chatting with him, Anderson was so angry that he wanted to beat that person up through the network cable. He endured such days for 7 days. 7 days, the Almighty God of War. Do you know how I spent these 7 days? Captain, I hope to take a day off. The almighty god of war is here. I hope to watch a game of his. Anderson looked at the Captain Kuya who was leading him in training, swallowed his saliva and said. Schiller beside him stared at him with wide eyes, with an expression of, "You are crazy." You know, the captain hates missing training because of chores the most. Does Anderson want to be scolded? Anderson is also very nervous now, but he can't care so much. The almighty god of war is online. If he doesn't go to the scene to see it, he will really go crazy. To everyone's surprise, Kuya did not get angry at this request. She thought for a moment and said, "Okay, the training will be suspended first, and we will double it in the evening. I want to watch this battle of the almighty god of war, too." Schiller and Anderson widened their eyes, unable to believe what they heard. This was the first time that the captain suspended training because of a battle in the virtual spirit world. And it was because of a cannon fodder. When Su Ji-yu entered the martial arts arena, before the match started, people in the audience had already squeezed in one after another. There were more than 100,000 seats, and almost 80,000 people squeezed in. This was just the flow of people in 1 minute. Ma Mingji looked at this situation and laughed triumphantly. The popularity of Su Ji-yu now is completely different from when he first arrived, when he was the only one standing in the audience to cheer him on. And Su Ji-yu looked at this scene and smiled bitterly. It's getting more and more exaggerated. After sighing, he ignored the matter and entered the arena to start matching. At the moment when Su Ji-yu started to match, a projection of a human figure was projected in the air. A young man wearing a floral shirt, with a tuft of hair on his head dyed fluorescent green and a little stubble on his face appeared in front of everyone. As soon as he appeared, he shouted in a rough voice. "Audience, do you miss me? I am your favorite commentator, Saorui. Today, the battle of the popular player Almighty Martial God will be commented on by me." The extremely conspicuous shape immediately caught everyone's attention. People in the audience pointed at the projection on the sky and started talking. Obviously this commentator who calls himself Saorui has a certain reputation. The Almighty Martial God's game is actually being commented on. Is this the first time that the cannon fodder segment is being commented on? How could it be this guy? Saorui has such a venomous mouth. Previously, a player who was commentating on the elite segment was so angry that he wanted to beat him offline. Looking at the bunch of fluorescent hairs on this guy's head, I feel very angry for no reason. There were buzzes of discussion around him, and Ma Mingji naturally noticed the figure in the sky. He poked the coquettish assassin next to him with his elbow and said, "Is this your relative?" "What a relative, this is the explanation." The coquettish assassin rolled his eyes. Since the last time the two met, when Ma Mingji invited the coquettish assassin to join the house of the god of war, they gradually became familiar with each other. Originally a coquettish assassin with a background in self-media, he helped Ma Mingji a lot in the early stages of the website. Sao Sai even has the identity of an administrator on the website of Martial God House. Associating a commentator for the battles of popular figures to popularize martial arts knowledge to the public as a traditional art. It's just that in general competitions with commentary, the brave stage is relatively rare, and usually only appears in the elite stage. This is the first time I saw a commentator come out to explain the game in the cannon fodder section. It seems that the almighty god of war defeated the anonymous Anderson last time, which made him a little out of the circle. The coquettish assassin explained while looking enviously at the back of Sugu, who was matching his opponent in the arena. As a self-media person like him, he tried his best to get out of the circle, but the other party actually did it without knowing it. The gap between people is really bigger than that between people and dogs. After hearing this, Ma Mingji was filled with excitement. Popularity means traffic, and traffic means money. He has little interest in martial arts, but he loves money. However, he suddenly thought of Sugu's injuries and felt a little bit sour again. I hope Brother Su can match a weaker opponent today. Ma Mingji prayed silently in his heart. After receiving applause and abuse from the audience, Sari, who was sitting in the commentary box, set his sights on the person he was going to explain today. This is the almighty god of war. His eyes looked back and forth on Sugu. Sao Rui had done his homework before coming to commentate and watched the video of the opponent's 2 battles more than 10 times, but watching it live today was a different feeling. At this moment, Sugu stood quietly in the arena, silently waiting for his opponent. His eyes were calm, as if the noise around him had nothing to do with him. Ignoring other things, he does have the demeanor of a powerful warrior. Sao Rui nodded secretly and said in his heart, but his pursuit of martial arts is not that pure. Otherwise, we wouldn't use random weapons to attract attention in battles. We wouldn't immediately set up a website after a game to try to convert fans. In Sari's view, the almighty martial god is a warrior with merchant attributes. The method of random weapons is not much different from using various extraordinary methods to gain access to high-ranking anchors. But there is nothing wrong with him doing this. After all, there are only a few people who can reach the top of martial arts. It is human nature to want to use their martial arts to gain more fame and money. Sao Rui chuckled. He had explained the elite battle, so naturally he still had some perspective. He quickly defined the object of this explanation. Sugu, who was in the arena, suddenly opened his closed eyes, focusing on his right front. This time the opponent came, and a fiery red portal appeared in the arena. Looking at this color, the audience felt their hearts skip a beat, and then there was a burst of excitement. Red represents the brave section. After 2 battles, the almighty martial god can truly match his opponent in the brave stage. Although after defeating Anderson in the last battle, everyone understood that the almighty martial god had the potential to hit the brave level. But no one thought that this day would come so quickly. Within 2 battles, I was matched with players who surpassed my own rank. It seems that the almighty martial god's battle with Anderson raised the system's estimate of his strength to a higher level. Sari explained with a smile. At the same time, he felt a little sad about the almighty martial god's misfortune. Using unique fighting methods would naturally attract people's attention and become popular. But the premise is that you have to win. The winner is the king, the loser is the clown. In Sao Rui's view, there is no room for the almighty martial god to use random weapons again against his opponent in the brave stage. Unless he wants to be the Joker, he should stop using his signature random weapons at the beginning of this battle. It seems that the fans who came to watch the almighty god of war today will be disappointed. The cannon fodder section versus the brave section is a leapfrog challenge. Anyone with a slightly normal mind should not use random weapons anymore. However, the fact that the second battle triggered a cross-level battle is enough to show that the system has affirmed the ability of the almighty martial god. Sao Rui first gave the almighty martial god a step down, which was regarded as helping him regain his respect and forming a good relationship. After all, he is a novice, so as an experienced commentator, he has to take care of a few things. Then, he was angrily criticized by a few fans of the almighty martial god. The almighty martial god has not even begun to fight, and you are here to badmouth me. Sorry, you are going to eat shit for the rest of your life. Thieves, let me tell you, our god of war is invincible and cannot be defeated by anyone. Sao Rui chuckled. He had long been used to being sprayed, and a dead pig was not afraid of being scalded by boiling water. The fluorescent hair on his head trembled, and then his eyes and Sugu looked at the second person who appeared in the arena. At this time, the red light curtain dissipated and the figure appeared. Sugu glanced over, slightly surprised. This time the opponent did not hide his face and appeared in the martial arts dojo using his original appearance. Male, visually estimated to be around 20 years old, tall and burly, with a body full of tendons. But the most impressive thing is his square face that has no expression and looks like a robot. It's actually him. Anderson looked a little surprised, and then explained to Kayuya and Schiller beside him. His name is Arnold, and he is a warrior on Earth. It's different from the path of the berserker that I took, which was to increase the destructive power to the limit. Arnold is a force-defending warrior who emphasizes both strength and defense. He is my old rival in the brave section. Because the soul power fluctuations are the most balanced, warriors have the highest plasticity among all professions. Berserker, force-sensitive warrior, force control warrior, the combat performance of different warrior types is completely different. At the same time, information about Arnold's real world was also revealed by Sari. A fourth-year student from Kaiyang Martial Arts University from Earth. He is also the captain of their university team. He won the title of the best warrior in the regional university last year, with a winning rate of 63% in the Brave division. The biggest characteristic of this fighter is his stability. Arnold will never underestimate any opponent he is matched with. He will try his best in every match. Once the balance of victory tilts to his side, he will not give up. The opponent made a comeback at every turn. When a martial artist develops a strong personal fighting style, he will no longer be able to hide his personal information in the martial arts dojo. The warrior's fighting posture is easier to recognize than his face. In the arena, Sugu looked at Arnold, and Arnold was also sizing up his opponent this time. He directly ignored the opponent's position break. Since the system caused the two to collide, it proved that the two could fight based on their recent record. There is no point in judging your opponent based on their rank. It's not his real name, it looks like it's an account he just registered a while ago. There were so many viewers at the scene, and it seemed that they were all here for him. Could it be that he was a famous anchor, relying on his unique skills to qualify for the Brave stage? When Arnold kept making guesses and judgments about his opponent's identity, he suddenly noticed the opponent's ID. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed slightly. Almighty God of War, the all-powerful warrior who defeated Anderson. The muscles in Arnold's entire body contracted suddenly, and his eyes widened, as if a beast was about to start hunting. Sugu stood with his hands behind his back. Facing Arnold's attack, his whole body was still extremely relaxed. He didn't seem to feel any pressure from his opponent. According to the usual rules of the martial arts dojo, when a person with a lower rank challenges a person with a higher rank, he or she can choose the weapon and battlefield environment first. Sari said with a professional smile. Judging from the two battles of the almighty martial god, he can fight both force-sensitive warriors and defensive heavy-duty warriors. His fighting style is extremely changeable. Heavy shield and black gold sword are his two first choices for weapons. I hope he can choose the different blood black gold sword to bring us a hearty attack and killing between warriors. Sao Rui is indeed a professional commentator. He aroused the interest of the audience with just a few words, and the audience began to burst into heated discussions. This Sao Rui is right this time. Facing such an opponent, I think the next best tactical choice for the almighty martial god is to use a long sword and rely on his agility advantage to perform a wandering kite on Arnold. Quote, to be more prudent, it would be better to use a heavy shield. I'm afraid that brother martial god may not be able to withstand Arnold's strength. I can't bear it. Have you forgotten the last battle? How did brother martial god crush the werewolf? The next moment, the discussion in the audience stopped abruptly. Sugu is still the same, with random weapons and random battlefields. Two huge illusory turntables began to rotate in the arena. The skillful operation gave people a feeling of being familiar with the road. Watching the two turntables spinning at high speed, the audience fell into a brief silence. Sweat broke out on Ma Mingji's face. Brother Su, your injury hasn't healed yet, is it really okay to play like this? After the silence, the atmosphere in the entire arena was heated up with Sugu's action. Brother Wushan is mighty, no matter what level he is, let's just do it. I suggest that the commentator should not make blind suggestions. You may understand the commentator, but how can you understand Brother Wushan? Brother Wushan did this when he debuted. No one can stop him from being so wild before the battle, not even the brave ones. Listening to the waves of shouting at him, Sao Rui's face became a little ugly, but that ugly look was immediately restrained by his expression management. He looked at Sugu's back and showed a faint mocking smile. Okay, this is how to play, right? It seems that I have misjudged this almighty god of war. He is closer to a businessman than a warrior. Until now, he was still betting that luck would give him a weapon that suits him. Defeat the opponent, and then make a big profit. I want to see if your luck can always be so good. This guy actually treats random weapons as routine operations. Anderson was in the audience, looking at the flying disc spinning in front of the almighty martial god with a complicated expression on his face. He recalled some painful memories a few days ago. Is this person crazy? Escaped from a mental hospital? He gave himself the ID of the martial god, and he really thinks he is the martial god. Schiller couldn't help but complain. Listening to the complaints of his two team members, Kayuya held his chin and looked at the choice of the almighty martial god with a thoughtful expression on his face. It has been nearly 700 years since humans discovered martial arts and superpowers in the Dark Ages. And the division of martial arts combat professions is a path to the highest level that has been verified by countless powerful warriors in the past 600 years. And now someone has begun to challenge the history of human martial arts. Is this a genius, or a madman? She gave up the Stark family training today and came here to take a look, just to confirm this. Kei Yuya looked at Su Ji-yu, who was standing with his hands behind his back and watching the two roulette wheels spinning at high speed. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, hoping not to disappoint me. Luck may be by your side for a while, but you can't have it forever. The almighty martial god will soon understand that this kind of trick played in the cannon fodder stage is a death sentence when playing against the brave stage. I hope today's failure can make him remember a little. If he starts over again in the past, he will still be an excellent warrior. After Cao Rui's impression of Su Ji-yu dropped to the freezing point, he became more and more impolite. And his words were naturally booed by many fans of the almighty martial god. In the face of many doubts, Cao Rui's face was extremely confident. He believed in his judgment as a commentator for so many years. From the moment the almighty martial god began to choose random weapons and random battlefields, the balance of victory began to tilt towards Arnold. Soon, the first roulette wheel in front of Su Ji-yu began to stop spinning. The pointer selected and confirmed the battlefield for both sides this time. Airspace Arena. This battlefield environment is a death fight platform suspended at a height of 1,000 meters, without any obstructions. Audiences who are afraid of heights can leave in advance, otherwise they may pee their pants when the arena environment is transformed. Cao Rui looked at the selected battlefield, explained it at the right time, and made a joke to the audience. As he spoke, the battlefield environment had begun to transform. The platform where Su Ji-yu and Arnold were located seemed to be climbing upwards, shortening the distance to the sky. When the battlefield was completely transformed, the two seemed to be able to touch the clouds with their hands. Looking at such a battlefield environment, the fans of the almighty god of war began to get excited. A place without any obstructions and obstacles is very suitable for heavy armor and warriors to perform. Aren't these two things the specialties of the god of war? As long as these two weapons can be selected, it is easy to win this battle. At this time, the speed of the other weapon selection turntable in front of Su Ji-yu has begun to slow down. The audience in the auditorium watched the slowly slowing turntable and prayed silently in their hearts. The turntable stopped, and everyone felt their hearts skip a beat when they saw the weapon pointed to by the turntable pointer. It was a pistol-like pattern. Soul-gathering pistol. Looking at this choice, Kei Yuya and Schiller, both long-range warriors, showed a playful smile at the same time. Pa! After the turntable dissipated, the picture on it turned into a physical entity. A pistol that looked like a toy fell at Sugu's feet. Looking at this weapon option, the enthusiastic cheers of the fans of the almighty martial god in the audience seemed to be handed a basin of cold water and suddenly stopped. Puff! Cao Rui couldn't help but let out a puff of laughter, and that laughter echoed in the silent arena. He is a professional commentator and usually doesn't laugh unless he really can't help it. He managed to hold back his laughter, then looked at the situation in the arena and said in a teasing tone. The almighty god of war has made a big mistake with the random weapons this time. The soul-gathering pistol is an entry-level weapon for long-range warriors, and its attack power is extremely weak. The only thing that can be praised is that in order to allow novices to practice accuracy by shooting multiple times without pressure, the firing rate is good and the consumption is relatively low. But if anyone wants to wrestle a powerful force-defending warrior in an arena without any shelter with a soul-gathering pistol, my evaluation is that an old woman enters the bed. It makes me laugh. The bullets fired by this thing probably can't even break Arnold's defense. Cao Rui showed his true colors and began to comment with a sharp tongue. As for this situation, the fans of the almighty martial god blushed, but they couldn't be stubborn anyway. The most uncomfortable thing in the world is that you are disgusted by someone, but suddenly you don't know how to refute it because you know that the other person is right. The destructive power of a single bullet of the soul-gathering pistol is not as good as that of the large-caliber gunpowder gun in ancient times. Holding this kind of force-defending warrior with both destructive power and defensive power. Even as fans, they can't imagine the scene of the almighty martial god winning. We must believe in the almighty martial god, who can create miracles. Ma Mingji looked at the current situation and his face was a little pale. As the webmaster of the martial god's home website, he shouted slogans loudly to the fans behind him. In fact, he was a little unsure now. He looked at the live broadcast equipment behind him, gritting his teeth and thinking, should I stop the live broadcast? Good analysis. Kei Yuya, who was standing on a high place, nodded after listening to Cao Rui's explanation. Although it was a bit vulgar, what he said was fine from a professional point of view. Such an environment and such weapons are indeed extremely unfavorable to the almighty martial god. Does the almighty martial god really have no chance of winning? Anderson said with gritted teeth. If he came this time and saw the person he wanted to defeat fall easily to someone else's hands, he would be very unwilling. From the battle with you, the almighty god's melee ability is very good. He can learn from you and throw away his pistol to fight Arnold in close combat. Of course, the chances of winning are very slim. It is irrational to fight Arnold, a force-defending warrior, in close combat. I guess you also understand this. After listening, Anderson sighed a little irritably. In the brave stage, he had fought with Arnold many times. In close combat between warriors, Anderson lost more than he won. This is also one of the opportunities for him to develop long-range abilities and broaden his martial arts path. He really couldn't imagine that there were still people who killed Arnold with bare hands. Are you sure you want to use this thing to fight me? In the arena, Arnold calmly watched the series of operations of the almighty god, with a cold expression on his face, and no emotion could be seen. After knowing that Anderson was defeated, he carefully studied the battle video of his opponent who defeated him. The little tricks of the almighty god to mess with the opponent's mentality before the fight were completely useless to him. This question was only because he didn't want to fight a boring battle. Su Ji-yu picked up the soul-gathering pistol and tried to inject soul power into it. After feeling and adapting to the weapon, he looked at Arnold again, as if confirming something. Then he nodded and said in a calm tone, "Enough." Arnold smiled. He had seen many people who liked to pretend, and in the end, they were all cured by him without exception. He opened the weapon column and immediately selected the weapon that he had already pressed the confirmation button in his mind. An exaggerated long-handled battle axe fell down, and the double moon axe face that was larger than a person's chest fell on the ground, leaving a small pit. Arnold pulled out the battle axe that was a head taller than him and waved it casually. The relaxed posture was like dancing with a plastic toy. Looking at Arnold's weapon selection, Cao Rui whistled easily. Defense axe, this is the name of the weapon that Arnold chose. In addition to being sharp, this battle axe has a special ability. Once soul power is injected into it, it can generate an energy shield to protect the body. The classic tactic used by long-range warriors to defeat melee warriors is to shoot soul power bullets at a high frequency to prevent the warriors from getting close, and then look for flaws to seek counterattacks. And Arnold's choice directly blocked this tactic completely. It can be predicted that in the next battle, Arnold will hold the giant axe and keep chasing and slashing at the almighty martial god, and the almighty martial god will have no use for Arnold's attacks. When he said this, Cao Rui's emotions began to rise a little, and he said excitedly, "This is the choice that a mature warrior should make. No matter what the opponent looks like, he will go all out and take it seriously. It is really appropriate for him to give the almighty martial god the first defeat in his martial arts dojo career. This will definitely teach him a profound lesson." Cao Rui's words echoed in the audience seats of the entire arena, and the faces of the fans of the almighty martial god turned a little pale. It's different. The opponent that Brother Wushan met in this battle is really different from the previous two. The coquettish assassin in the first game is just an eye-catching anchor. When the battle started, he was still thinking about finding materials from the opponent. Anderson in the second game is indeed strong enough, but the trumpet that others opened was the reincarnation of the gun god, and he was here to practice his skills. The weapon he chose was still a long-range firearm, and he didn't choose the weapon he is best at all. Compared with Brother Wushan, he is inherently at a disadvantage. But in this game, he met this Arnold. He is worthy of being a brave warrior, too steady, and didn't give Brother Wushan any chance. Why are you so scared? The fight hasn't started yet. Believe in your Brother Wushan. He is a man who can create miracles. Feeling the depressed atmosphere, Ma Mingji roared, "Brother Wushan, come on, hit him hard." But this time, there were fewer people who roared with Ma Mingji. It seemed that even the temperature had dropped a few degrees. When the arena completed the environmental transformation, the voices in the audience could no longer be heard by the warriors in the arena. Both sides completed the selection of weapons, and the death fight had begun. Standing in the airspace arena, Arnold looked at Su Jiyu and asked calmly, "I'll ask you one last time, are you sure you don't want to admit defeat?" Bang! What responded to him was the bullet shot by Su Jiyu. Su Jiyu raised his gun and shot very quickly, and many people only saw a shadow of his hand when he raised his hand. B-level combat skill, gun drawing technique. When he raised his hand, the soul power bullet accurately hit Arnold's heart. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. Arnold lowered his head and looked at the soul power bullet shot by the other party, burning a small round hole in his martial arts uniform. The exposed bronze skin turned slightly red, and nothing happened. The shot of the almighty god of war was perfect except that it caused no damage at all. Cao Rui teased. Looking at such a scene, the fans of the almighty god of war all felt a little desperate. The opponent didn't even open the energy shield of the defensive axe. The physical soul defense alone could offset the bullets shot by the almighty god of war. What can he use to fight? Are you tickling me? Arnold looked at Su Jiyu and sneered. He didn't dodge that shot. After that shot, he was sure that the opponent's weapon could not cause any damage to him. Then the next thing to do is to end the battle quickly. He won't be bothered by Anderson's mistakes. He will use all his strength from the beginning and won't give the almighty god of war a chance to breathe. Let me tell you, this is how a real man fights. B-level advanced combat skills, Gangchi step. B-level superpowers, power multiplication. Highly skilled combat skills and level B supernatural powers were superimposed on Arnold's legs at the same time. The superposition of the two powers produced an astonishing speed. The clumsy-looking force protecting warrior seemed to have teleported at this moment and appeared in front of Su Jiyu in the blink of an eye. The battle axe, which was bigger than Su Gu's head, mercilessly chopped down his body from top to bottom. Facing the battle axe that was slashing towards him, Su Jiyu stepped lightly and took several steps back to avoid this attack. Boom! The battle axe in Arnold's hand hit the ground of the arena heavily with a force that seemed to be able to tear the sky and split the earth. Amid a roar, a big pit appeared on the ground. After the arena floating in the sky suffered this blow, it began to sway like a boat encountering wind and waves. This guy's strength is greater than the last time we fought, and even his speed is much faster. Anderson sighed as he watched Arnold swing the axe. Then he turned his eyes to the almighty martial god. Arnold's earth-shattering blow shook the entire venue. Su Jiyu, standing on the undulating ground, seemed to be unaffected. His hands were like iron welding, holding the soul-gathering pistol steadily, maintaining a shooting posture. Bang, bang, with flames spitting out from the muzzle, Su Jiyu began to shoot continuously, fighting back. But at this time, Arnold's defensive axe emitted a soft light, and a layer of yellow honeycomb-shaped energy shield was covered on the surface of his body. The soul bullet hit the energy shield, and the shield rippled, and then the bullet dissipated without causing any damage. It seems that our little martial god really won't cry until he sees the coffin, and won't give up until he sees the yellow river. His weapon has been targeted by Arnold from beginning to end. That toy gun can't break Arnold's body covered with soul power, and even the energy shield on his body. For the toy gun in the hands of the almighty martial god, Arnold's double-layer defense is an absolute defense. Saori looked at the situation on the scene and said with a smile. Everything that happened in the arena now is exactly as he expected before the game. Next, the almighty martial god will be suppressed to death throughout the whole process. I can almost make a judgment on this battle now. Arnold will win. When Cao Rui finished his commentary, Arnold rushed up again with the battle axe. This time Su Jiyu did not dodge. He stood still and continued to shoot. Straight shooting gun, arc gun, trick bullet gun, jump shooting gun. Bullets were fired at Arnold at various unimaginable angles. This may be the only advantage of the soul-gathering pistol. In order to facilitate novices to practice multiple times at a distance, its attack frequency is very high. As long as you can withstand the recoil of the gun and provide a steady stream of soul power, you can use it to fire continuously. Obviously Su Jiyu only has a pistol, but he relied on it to create a feeling of rain of bullets. But unfortunately, the dense bursts were completely blocked by the energy shield. The seemingly gorgeous soul power bullets could not even stop Arnold's attack. The warrior once again completed the close combat against the long range, and the violent battle axe was like a meat grinder, crushing towards the almighty martial god. Boom, 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 boom. Facing the opponent's violent attack, Su Ji-yu abandoned his concentration and used the steps he had recently learned. A-level combat skills, variable frequency steps. To everyone's surprise, this time the almighty god of war did not try to use his physical advantage to distance himself. Relying on his A-level steps, Su Ji-yu turned back and forth under Arnold's axe, and narrowly avoided the opponent's attack every time. At the same time, he did not stop pouring out soul bullets. In close range, the high-frequency soul bullets even raised visible streams of light between the two. It is amazing that the long range can make such a high-quality counterattack when the warrior is close to him. But in the audience, the fans of the almighty god of war are getting more and more desperate. In the first two battles, when Brother Wushan fell into a disadvantage, he would immediately reverse the disadvantage with a devastating means. But this time is different. It seems that no matter what he does, he can't stop breaking the opponent's defense. This gorgeous attack is like a counterattack, like a moth flying into a flame. At least the long-range skills of this almighty god of war are indeed much stronger than our Anderson. Schiller joked easily. Anderson rolled his eyes at him. There was no need to watch the next battle. The steps of the almighty god of war were indeed exquisite, but he had to maintain his steps to avoid attacks while maintaining stable shooting under high pressure. Doing two things at the same time could lead to fatal flaws at any time. But Arnold was completely different. He only had to consider one thing: attack, attack, and attack. He would only get more and more accustomed to the strange steps of the almighty god of war, and it was only a matter of time before the attack caused damage. This was another boring battle in which the warriors slaughtered the long range after getting close. Boom. As Anderson expected, Arnold's battle axe slashed horizontally from the bottom, slashing in the direction that the almighty god of war could not avoid. Su Ji-yu saw that he could not dodge, so he could only twist his body to minimize the damage. Bang! The collision between the flesh and the weapon made a muffled sound that made people feel toothache. In a moment of response, Su Ji-yu went from being cut by the axe blade to being hit by the back of the axe. But the collision between the flesh and the weapon still made him be hit directly and flew out. Su Ji-yu stomped his feet hard on the ground, and under the huge impact force, his feet plowed a deep dent in the ground. His body was at the edge of the airspace arena, and he was barely able to stop. He was only one step away from falling into the abyss. The injury from the 1,000-layered martial arts tower still has some impact. Otherwise, it would not be like this if it was just an axe. Su Ji-yu coughed lightly a few times, and a line of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth on the ground. The almighty martial god's final counterattack is over. The balance of victory has completely tilted towards Arnold, and this battle is almost over. Saori's voice echoed in the arena, and the fans of the almighty martial god were silent. Some people covered their eyes and didn't want to continue watching, and some people had already left in advance. Yeah, it's almost over. Kei Yuya smiled, and she looked at Arnold, the opponent of the almighty martial god, with a touch of sympathy on her face. Fighting with this level of long range, I'm afraid he will be autistic for a long time after this battle. Now in the entire arena, I'm afraid she is the only one who understands what the almighty martial god just did. Feeling the pungent taste of blood in the throat, and the excitement of wandering between life and death just now. The light in Su Gu's eyes became brighter, like a beast stimulated by blood, full of excitement. Arnold looked at his opponent, felt the fighting spirit in his eyes that had not yet been extinguished, and nodded slightly. Not bad, he is indeed a qualified warrior. However, the outcome of this battle has been determined since you chose that toy gun. Your bullet can't hit me, Arnold said coldly. Don't resist in vain, let's end this boring battle. After listening to his opponent's words, Su Ji-yu smiled and pointed to his heart, saying lightly, I'm going to shoot here with the next bullet. Facing the provocation of his opponent, Arnold snorted coldly, playing tricks. Arnold rushed up again. He wanted to end this not so interesting battle. Su Jiyu raised his hand, and he didn't do high-frequency continuous shooting this time. Instead, he casually threw a shot, and compared with the previous attack, this bullet seemed extremely casual. And this casually fired bullet, when it hit the energy shield of the Guardian Axe, it disappeared quickly without a ripple. The energy shield seemed to have become a trampoline pressed down by a heavy object, and began to sink continuously, and then sink again. Finally, the tension of the energy shield seemed to have reached its limit. Bang! With a crisp sound, the honeycomb-shaped energy shield was shattered by the shot, and the golden soul energy fragments scattered in the air. In Arnold's incredible eyes, the soul bullet still hit the same position. The heart that was shot by the first bullet of the Almighty God of War at the beginning of the battle between the two. Look, it hit. Su Gu's face was filled with a bright smile, as if he had completed a certain game achievement and was looking for someone to show off. Arnold injected his soul power into the defensive axe again, but the defensive axe did not move. It seemed that the device that activated the energy shield was really shot down by that bullet. How did he do it? Arnold looked at Su Jiyu not far away, with a strong fear in his eyes. Being strong is not scary, but the unknown is scary. He stopped the rash attack and began to confront Su Jiyu Yaoyao. At the same time, he kept replaying the seemingly casual shot in his mind, trying to find the secret of breaking the energy shield. The audience in the audience looked at the shattered energy shield, and everyone was silent for a while. What Arnold, who had been in a fighting state, did not understand, they naturally did not understand even more. They did not understand what happened, why the defense that the almighty martial god could not break with 1,000 shots just now could be solved with one bullet now. Almighty martial god is awesome. Ma Mingji stood up from the audience with a flushed face and shouted hoarsely. From the beginning of the battle, he was suffocated by the depressing atmosphere of this battle. Now seeing his brother shoot the fool on the opposite side, he felt an indescribable joy in his heart. Although he didn't understand how Su Jiyu did it, he didn't understand, but it didn't stop him from shouting 666. With Ma Mingji's shout, the Wuxian fans, who were extremely depressed at the beginning, were immediately given a shot of adrenaline. Then everyone followed suit. Wuxian brother is awesome. I admit that I just doubted Wuxian brother for a moment in my heart, I am guilty. Although I don't know what happened, it doesn't stop my Wuxian brother from being awesome. Cao Rui, didn't you just say that our Wuxian brother will lose? Speak, why don't you speak now? Cao Rui is indeed silent now. As a commentator, he must explain to the audience what happened just now in a timely manner, but at this moment he scratches his head and doesn't know how the almighty Wuxian did it. Is this some kind of new long-range combat skill that he doesn't know? It's impossible. No matter what combat skill, the cornerstone of its power is soul power, otherwise you can't release the combat skill. How could such a weak soul power bullet shot from a soul-gathering pistol penetrate the energy shield? This was the first time in this battle that Cao Rui was silent. No wonder no one knows what happened. The operation of the Almighty God of War requires a little imagination to understand. Kei Yuya said calmly. She looked at the back of the Almighty God of War with admiration in her eyes. As a long-range warrior, he can get a 90-point evaluation from Kei Yuya. Schiller frowned, and then the frown slowly stretched, and his whole face became full of shock. Although he realized it later, he figured out what the Almighty God of War did. Boss, what happened? Anderson swallowed his saliva and said blankly. Although he was a crazy warrior, he also practiced long range for a period of time, and there were many long-range masters around him. In this regard, Anderson thought he still had some knowledge. But everything that happened on the field just now was still far beyond his understanding. The Almighty God of War just raised his gun and fired an ordinary straight shot, which did not look like it could penetrate the energy shield. Kei Yuya smiled and explained. In fact, the principle is very simple. After multiple bends, metal fatigue will occur and break. And if the energy circuit of the energy shield is hit by multiple soul power attacks in a short period of time in the core area, it will also cause the collapse of the entire energy shield. Then she turned her eyes to Schiller, and the meaning was very clear, and asked him to explain. Schiller saw the boss's order and said slowly. The shooting of the Almighty God of War at Arnold is divided into two parts. One part is a chaotic scattering. This part of the shooting has no target, just shooting at Arnold's energy shield to confuse him. so as to cover up his real strategic intention. Speaking of this, he took a deep breath, as if he didn't dare to believe what he was going to say next. And his real strategic intention is Arnold's heart position, which is the core of the energy shield. Once it collapses, the energy shield will be completely destroyed. My judgment is that there are no less than 300 soul bullets shot at Arnold's heart position, and the deviation of each bullet does not exceed 3 centimeters. Only in this way can the entire defensive axe be shot and collapsed in a short time. After listening to Schiller's explanation, Anderson's eyes were wide open. He really wanted to say the word impossible, but apart from what Schiller just said, he really couldn't seem to find a better explanation. But are there such long-range warriors in this world? Under the strong pressure from the warriors, he still planned a very clear personal strategic intention in his mind. Then he fired thousands of bullets in succession. Each bullet was under high pressure, following the master's will to complete its strategic conception, and then led to the final victory. Is this possible? Anderson, I know you want to say impossible, but this is the only possibility I can think of. After I eliminate all possibilities one by one, the remaining one will be the answer no matter how impossible it is. Schiller said unwillingly. As a warrior of the same profession, he felt pressure from the almighty god of war. Wait, is almighty martial god a long-range warrior? Thinking of this, Schiller felt his teeth sore. He looked at Sugu's figure below and said to himself, this is a monster. In the arena, Arnold, who was confronting Sugu, finally couldn't hold it any longer. For warriors, sometimes courage is needed. Even if you don't understand how to do it, so what? The two seemed to have agreed upon it at the same time. When Arnold began to charge forward again, the soul-gathering pistol in Sugu's hand began to pour bullets at the same time. A torrential rain of bullets poured towards Arnold, but the situation was still the same. The soul power bullets condensed by the soul-gathering pistol were too weak to cause substantial damage. In the wide area without any obstructions, Arnold quickly brought Sugu into his attack range. He used the battle axe in his hand to attack Sugu with his combat skills. But this time, there was no need to cover up their true fighting intentions with a large number of ineffective shots. Everyone felt the powerful gun control ability of the almighty martial god. Facing a close-range attack, once Arnold makes a move to attack, 7 or 8 spirit bullets will immediately be fired at Arnold's knees, shoulders, eyes, neck, etc., to disrupt his weak defenses, attack rhythm. As soon as Arnold's attack rhythm was disrupted, Sugu immediately withdrew from his attack circle, and the cycle continued. Every time Arnold tried to swing his axe at the almighty god of war, he would suffer a blow that seemed to see through him. The synchronized movements between the two even gave people the feeling that the almighty god of war was more familiar with Arnold's body than Arnold. When Arnold lost the protection of the energy shield, his attacks became obviously slower due to the interference of the almighty martial god. It's so accurate. His hit rate is at least 90 or more every time. I want to fight him. Schiller let out a compliment. Besides Kayuya, the almighty martial god was the first person who could admire him in long-range technology. If Arnold doesn't think of a way to break the situation, he will continue to be kited like this, and he will be consumed by the long-range weapon with the soul-gathering pistol. Hee. Schiller let out a laugh. Arnold in the arena was obviously aware of this problem, and his face, which was originally like a robot, became increasingly cold and hard. Finally, it seemed that he couldn't hold it any longer, and Yang Tian let out a roar. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.